Good morning, afternoon, or evening, whatever it is. I've probably used that intro before, and I don't care. It's the upgrade. My name is Gary Muttley, and he is the wonderfully talented
Len Carmichael, Landmine Studios, coming to you from Landmine Studios today, again.
From the legendary Landmine Studios.
And there is definitely no legend in here. It's just a place.
You're a legend in your own mind.
I'm not even a legend in my own mind. I'm just a guy. I just do what I do. If it comes out good, if it's great, and if it comes out bad, that's probably your fault.
I'm a legend in somebody's mind, and it's probably the guy behind the counter at my local White Castle.
Oh, Jesus. I can only imagine what legendary feats you've pulled off in there. What's the worst you've ever done in there?
Oh, I haven't really tempted fate that bad. I mean,
No?
No. I mean, back in the day, if you took it over the course of a night, like I ate a lot of burgers after consuming lots and lots of alcohol.
Okay.
But, you know, I didn't do anything stupid like have like the surf and turf or something.
Wait, they serve a surf and turf?
Yeah, it's a double.
I've never been to White Castle.
All right, I'll tell you a little story. You know, we had Rich from State of Disgrace on the podcast, you know,
right.
The school teacher. I went to White Castle one time late night after a gig when I was playing with State of Disgrace with Mike and Danny, the singer and the drummer. And they were like, yo, I think we're going to have the surf and turf. And I'm like, no.
I mean, that sounds bad.
The surf and turf is a double burger. So it's got, you know, the top and bottom bun and another bun in the middle. And on one bun, it has 2 burger patties. Mm-hmm. And on the other one, it has a fish sandwich.
Oh, no.
So it's all in one shot.
Oh, no.
And I told them, I was like, don't do it. Do not do it. And the next day, I heard both of them. And they were like, yo, we should have listened to you. They were all fucked up the next day. I'm like, yo, I love the castle, but I know, like, I don't fuck with fish anyway. Yeah, but even if I did fuck with fish, like, I'm not fucking with no White Castle fish.
Hell no.
Like, no. And I'm certainly not fucking with no surf and turf.
That is an absolutely no for me.
Yeah, those dudes were hurting the next day.
Oh, God, that sounds fucking terrible.
It was a day filled with regret.
So, obviously, I live in New Jersey, so there are a couple White Castles around that if I really wanted it, I could go get it. I drive by them occasionally, especially when I'm going to my amp repair guy, my tech. I have to pass 2 or 3 White Castles to get to his house. And it has never once crossed my mind that I should just pull in and have a White Castle burger. It looks like cafeteria food if cafeteria food makes you shit. Like, I mean, everything kind of makes me shit, but I just look at it on the commercials and I know that it's going to cause a disruption in the force.
I mean, listen, I love it. To this day, I still love it. I don't eat nearly as much as I used to, but that's because I'm not spending the night out punching people in the face at a hardcore show and consuming massive amounts of malt liquor. But you know, I still love it. And hey, it was the first fast food.
It's fine that it's the first fast food. It could be the last, motherfucker. I am not eating it. I'm just gonna skip it.
I just figured you would have PTSD from that time in Patterson at your old studio.
Oh, God, no. I don't even want to talk about that. You guys just burnt the place down. It's fine.
Well, I guess I'll have to tell the story for the listeners now. My old band, Mickey's Crew, recorded with Len when he had a studio in Patterson. And we were heading out there. It was like 10 o'clock, 10:30 in the morning. We were riding in 2 cars. And I think Mike and Tim were in front of us. And I was riding with Eric. Mm-hmm. And Mike reaches out the passenger window and points because there's a White Castle that we're about to pass. And then I reach out and give him the thumbs up, and the 2 cars swerve across 3 lanes of traffic and whip it into White Castle at 10:30 in the morning. We got a whole bunch of shit, ate it all, and then we went to Patterson to Len's studio, and we proceeded to bomb the spot. It was bombed the fucking spot. That place smelled like a swamp filled with zombies in the fucking sun, covered in shit.
I couldn't even concentrate half the time. It was just fucking, just a shit sandwich in there.
Oh man, it was
like shit soup.
Oh, it was so bad. It was so bad that if you left the doors open in Patterson, they probably would not have robbed the place.
You know what? It was so bad that if you open the doors, you wouldn't even notice because it just would blend in with Patterson.
Exactly.
So we have a guest on today.
who I'm sure is amused by all our fucking...
I'm just letting you guys do your thing. I'm enjoying it, so...
We would like to welcome one Matt Bennett from Iron Price into the show. Hello, Matt.
All right. Hey,
Matt.
thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
First off, Matt, do you enjoy White Castle?
I did at one time enjoy White Castle when I was in the area of one. We do not have them down here, at least not to my knowledge. I'm actually vegan. I've been vegan for a couple of years now, so there's not really much there for me.
Don't they do Impossible now?
Yeah,
they do.
They do the Impossible Burger.
Yeah, there's none around me, so I don't really have the opportunity. But there was a time when I did enjoy Crave Case.
So one of the things that I'm always infinitely jealous of Matt of is that he actually, for a couple years, lived like a block from a Waffle House.
Whoa.
And if that was me, I would have been 900 pounds by now because I would have eaten every waffle that they offered every day.
Oh, the thing is like down here, I mean, you know this now, Len, from coming down this way, but like there's Waffle Houses all over the place. Like I moved, but I'm still within 5 minutes of like 2 or 3 of them.
That's crazy.
Wow.
And delicious. But also, the other place that you are right near.
Oh, I'm even closer now. Is
Chap's Pit Beef, and Chap's Pit Beef is a wonderful location. And I'm sorry that you cannot. You've chosen not to indulge.
How's that? I move even closer to the Pit Beef Mecca, and decided I'm not going to eat it anymore. So.
Hey,
yeah,
we all make choices in life, whether they're good or wrong.
That takes a special kind of dedication. So
yeah, you know, it just is what it is at this point. But the only thing that makes it difficult is being on the road with your band, and you're in a band with a bunch of dudes who eat meat, and then I've got to be the pain in the ass. So
yeah, I understand that.
So Matt, you're the principal songwriter for, well, at least riff writer for Iron Price, correct?
I am, yeah. You know, it's most of the songwriting is at this point my drummer and I, Travis. You know, I'll come up with riffs and bounce them off him, and yeah. He's you know, no, it's not really an owning type slave situation. It's more of like you know, he just owes me a lot of favors. Let's put it that way.
I see. Yeah.
But no. Like I bounce ideas off of him, and we just kind of make things grow from there. Like we'll make a skeleton, send it out to the rest of the guys, and you know, now that we have Marty in the fold, like he actually is pretty great at contributing ideas, and yeah, it's pretty much that's the way it goes. But yeah, I come up with the riffs for the most part.
And then Dennis incoherently yells over top of it.
Yeah, he just kind of fucks it all up, but
that's fine.
That's what singers do.
Yeah, of course.
So what, like, how did Iron Price even come to be?
So Dennis and I have we've been friends for over 20 years at this point, like, you know, for better or worse. And we've, you know, I was in a series of bands, and he was always in Dead and Buried, and we had always wanted to do a band together. In fact, to the point where I would fill in for Dead and Buried if he needed a guitar player. And it just never worked out. And then finally, you know, the stars aligned where we were able to start a project together. And because he's in Delaware and it's not easy for him to travel, I kind of had to build the band down here closer to Baltimore. You know, so I kind of just reached out to people that I knew that would be on the same wavelength. And, you know, we've had couple ex-members along the way, and but I just kind of surrounded myself with people I felt I could work with,
Right.
and just kind of grew it from there. And then it's really been Dennis and I's baby, for a long time, trying to get it, a lot of stillbirths, but we finally raised it up and slapped it on the ass and set it out in the world. But yeah, like it's been a bumpy ride for the most part, but we make it work.
I mean, one of the things that I should be clear about is that I do know a large amount about your band because I've recorded all of your releases,
every single one. Yeah,
and I've filled in for you, but I've never actually talked about how it came to be. Like,
yeah.
I don't know all the dirty details of how the sauce is made. I just put it in the pot at the end and then shoot it out the window.
Try to make it taste good.
Yeah.
When did you guys start the band?
So we started in like 2014 when we got together and started writing. And I think we recorded our demo late 2014, early 2015. Does that sound right?
Bro, time has gone by so fast that I don't really like. It's hard for me to put values on specific times. It might have been 2014.
No, it was 2015 because we actually recorded our demo after our first show.
Okay.
Because our first show was in January 2015 at the A389 Fest or whatever you want to call it.
Right. You played with In Cold Blood, right?
We did, yeah. In Cold Blood and I don't even remember anymore.
Starbrother?
They played a different day.
Whole bunch of bands that day.
Yeah.
Well, those couple days.
But then we recorded like in March, so it would have been a couple months later.
You recorded in the old studio in the dungeon of my basement.
Our first 2 releases were recorded there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you've done, 2 here at the new place? Or 1?
So we did the demo and the split with you in your basement, and then we did Easier Every Day.
The 2 songs, and then we did the last release.
That's correct. Yeah. So the last 2 have been done there. Yeah.
Okay. It's hard to remember all this shit, man.
It really is. It really is.
So one of the things that is steady throughout all of your releases, at least in my opinion, is that fucking guitar tone. Like, we have honed in and really focused, and it's different on each record, for sure, but, like, there's some similarity through all 4 releases. And some of it comes down to that VHT that you have.
Yes, that is the backbone and the soul of my sound. That and my Telecaster.
Were you using that on the?
Yes, I did. Okay. It was a little different. It had different pickups in it.
Okay.
But it was the same guitar. Yeah, I've been using that the entire time in Iron Price. I've used the same guitar. But that my VHT Pitbull that has been my dream guitar since I was a teenager, worshiping Helmet, which is my favorite band. Paige Hamilton's guitar tone has been something I've strived for forever. And once I learned what amp he played, I looked everywhere for a reasonable price for one deal of a lifetime. So I had to jump on it, and it's been the best decision I ever made guitar wise. So it's a fucking dream maker.
Nice.
For me, the first person or people or whatever that I saw playing a VHT Pitbull were actually Unearth. So I went to see Unearth when they were, before even the Stings of Conscience came out, they were on that EP tour cycle before they really got signed, and they were playing at this place called Palanca Park in PA, and Mushmouth was on the show, and A Life Once Lost was on the show, and a couple other local bands were on the show, and I was watching, and just the sheer volume of Unearth playing through full stacks and VHT pit bulls, I was like, one day I'm going to have to get me one of those. I'm going to have to get me one of those. It just sounds insane. So I too have one that's right over there, and mine happens to be just slightly older than Matt's, but it's a 91, and it's from 91, and it's number 3. So I actually have the third pit bull ever made.
Wow.
Because the 1 and 2, I believe Steve has. Stephen Fryette is the guy who makes the VHT pit bull, and I'm pretty sure I own the first one he actually sold.
Yeah, and mine's 92, number 32. So I'm not sure if it's the 32nd one made in 92 or if the serial numbers kind of continued.
I think you just have the 32nd made one.
That's what I think so too. I actually have been had corresponded with Fryette about a few things with the amp, and he was able to show me the bill of lading or whatever you want to call it from when he shipped it to a guitar store near DC when he originally built it. Like, that's how deep his records go.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's
it's
wild.
crazy. So I can basically I've seen the birth certificate of my amp. And it's nuts. It's nuts to be able to find stuff like that. And it's cool that you can reach out to these kind of boutique amp makers and gear guys that keep this kind of stuff, and you can really find history of something that's important to you. I mean, like some guys don't give a shit about their gear. They just it is what it is. It's loud and it's distorted and does what they want. But I actually really do care, So,
dude, I care so much about the sound of an amp, obviously, because I'm sitting inside of a Kemper right now. I have a non-digital Kemper. But yeah, I mean, I just recently picked up a Friedman head, and when I got it, it actually had the paperwork in the box from Dave Friedman himself, with literally every value for every resistor and cap, etc., that it should be, and it's just all handwritten on this piece of paper. Well, it's a number of pieces of paper, and it was jammed in the box. I'm having a problem with it. It won't switch to the clean channel, so I've been going back and forth via email with Dave Friedman himself, and he offered to fix it. I'll fix it for you. So all I have to pay for is the shipping to get it out there, and he's going to fix it for free, which is awesome. And, he knows everything that he needs to know about the amp. He's like, hey, just take it out of the chassis and take a picture so that I can take a look at it from here so I can determine, what the deal is.
Wow.
And I send him a picture, and then within, 20 minutes, he's like, all right, I can see what the problem is. Just send it to me. I'll fix it.
That is crazy.
That's so cool that you've got guys out there that'll stand behind their product like that. Because, I had a similar experience dealing with Steve Fryette. I mean, obviously the amp is 30 something years old, almost 30 years old at this point. And,
right.
He wasn't going to, because I was having issues with it at 1.2, which you know about, but
I have issues with mine.
Yeah. He was, it's not like he was going to fix it for free, but, he was very willing to talk me through what he thinks some of the issues were. And he said he would make time at his bench. And I'm talking about a master amp maker. Like, if you look at the, the greats of all time, I would put him in the top 10 of great amp designers. And this dude's talking to me, willing to work on my amp that he made 30 something years ago, when he's made literally tens of thousands of them, which it's just crazy to me. It's not like you can just reach out to Baron von Crate to have him fix your Blue Voodoo.
Well, I mean, you could even take that one step up. You can't even reach out to PV and get an actual person.
No, of course not.
Some Joe Schmo or even Mesa. You're just going to get some idiot on the phone that can sort of talk you through the problem or point you to one of their qualified repair shops that they would prefer you to take it to. I know that if I really had a problem with any of these boutique pieces over here, I can either go to my guy or I can go to them. If I call Bogner, I could probably get Bogner on the phone or someone damn close to him that actually works on these amps and get a real answer.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, for me, I love gear. Like, I love the knobs, like, just fiddling around and just trying to find new things within an amp that I didn't even know existed in it. And I don't mean to come down on the guys in the Kemper or Axe Effects realm. Those things are good and they're great tools, but they just don't have the mojo that a real amp has. There is some magic in these boxes, and if you're willing to sit down and tinker and fool with pedals, get a different guitar, get a new pickup, like really fuck around with your tone, you can find something that is perfect for you, and you didn't have to just cheat by buying something and downloading somebody else's perfect.
Right. See, I understand the Kemper thing a little bit, like if you're going, like, taking stuff on tour, because maybe you don't want to take those amps and put a beating on them on the road.
Sure.
But, like, nothing beats in the studio having the real amps, not the whole, modeling setup.
If I ever went the modeling route, I would probably want to model amps that I own. And exactly
right.
Like you said, and being able to take an approximation of it on the road and not have to worry about it. Because, like, Len knows this too. I actually bought a brand new 5153 just so I had something new and reliable and something I didn't have to worry about, as a non-boutique amp that I can play shows with. I mean, obviously nobody's playing shows right now really, but I just, my VHT is so, I don't want to say fragile at this point, but I've had issues with it where I believe that if it hadn't been on the road, none of these issues would have happened. It's just the wear and tear.
Right.
So I just can't risk it anymore. The amp's worth more than the actual value of it to me. So, if I ever felt the urge to go the Kemper, whatever, modeling route, then that's what I would do. I would get my own amp modeled so that I could leave it in a case and not have to worry about it and have some sort of approximation of it. But there's a soul. I really believe this is going to sound corny as shit to some people, but there's a soul to the tubes and caps and relays and all that stuff that's inside of an amp. Like,
well, they all build a relationship with each other over time.
Yeah, there's something magic about a 20-year-old cap that probably needs to be replaced, but there's just something special about, like, the like you said, it's just the relationship of all the parts that are inside of an amp, and that's not in a computer program. Like, that's just not there.
Yeah, and especially those older ones where, the tolerances were different. Like, everybody talks about Kerry King's Holy Grail 800, and it's just because some of those components, there was such a variance back then. So, like, you'll get that hot one, because what you're talking about with having that 5150, Malone from Billy Club does the same thing. He owns a 5150, but the main sound of Billy Club's guitars, he has a Fender M80 that, for whatever reason, just like we're talking about with the Kerry King thing, that M80 is hot because he got another M80 and it didn't sound the same. And I think, Len, you had an M80 at the studio.
I have one.
Yeah,
it's sitting right to my right.
And it doesn't sound.
I bought it because Malone had it, and I wanted to have the Billy Club guitar sound in the house, and it does not sound like Billy Club, which it just doesn't.
No, it's that Holy Grail amp because those tolerances on the components were different back then. So he just managed to get a super hot Fender M80 because people have asked him about his gear and sound, or asked me.
And he's like, I plug in.
Yeah. And I tell him, I'm like, oh, he's got a Fender M80. And they're like, what? Really? And then I'm like, yeah, if you get an M80, it's not going to sound like that.
Yeah.
And he's had it repaired a couple of times, but they haven't done major changes to the board or anything. It's just that hot one.
And that's something that terrified me about my Pitbull is, and Len, like, I'm going to say this a lot, Len knows this, but I had some pretty major surgery done to that thing not that long ago because it basically was dead. It was a paperweight. Right. You know, and I like Len has an amp guy. I have an amp guy down here too. Actually, Len bought a handmade amp from him.
I have 2 amp guys. Let's be clear.
Yeah,
I have 2 amp guys now. I have my semi-local amp guy that's about an hour north from me, and his name is Brian. He runs J&B Amp Company. It's up by Jose Tejas near Woodbridge, New Jersey. And then I also trust and would gladly utilize Matt's amp guy, who is Mike Nauer, and he runs Black Cat amps. And
yeah, that Black Cat.
Yeah, so as Matt was just saying, I had him build me a 800 clone from scratch. This thing is hand wired. It's to spec. Like literally, it's one of the greatest amps I've ever played out of. Every time you hook it up, it sounds amazing. And
it's alive. It's just like it sounds alive. Like it's crazy.
Yeah. It's got like some amps you have to put on like a depth knob and this, that, and the other thing. This amp sounds 3D, and all you do is plug into the fucking thing. Because we picked Mike picked, and I agreed to pay for all the highest quality components, tubes. I mean, he went through and hand tested every single tube that he purchased in different positions to make sure that everything that was going through was the most optimal. And I'm telling you, I just used it on a recording for these kids in this band reaching out, and I mean, we lit it up and it sounded exactly like it should. It brings the flavor of an 800 straight to the front of your face. Like, I couldn't be more happy that Matt introduced me to Mike. So Mike was taking care of your VHT, correct?
Yeah. So I had a number of issues with mine. I had a power tube socket had failed. It became desoldered, so I was losing power. On top of that, like I said, it was a 30-year-old amp, so the capacitor don't last forever. They're not. They do not. So you have an old amp. There's probably a chance you either have already had the caps done or you're going to need to. You know. So I had him do all that work for me, and the scary thing is that a lot of, you know, I don't want to say a lot of the sound of an amp is in these parts, but it's a part of the recipe. So when you change things out like that, there's a chance your amp is not going to sound the same.
Yeah.
And I was terrified of that because I thought, okay, well, I'm going to get this thing fixed. If it doesn't sound the same to me and I don't love it anymore, I'm going to have to sell it because it's going to break my heart having this freaking thing that doesn't sound the way it used to. And luckily, you know, and Len can attest to this, that Mike is a fucking wizard. And I mean, he brought it back to life.
True wizard.
Yeah, he brought that thing to life, and I think it sounds even better now than it did.
Nice.
I would say that the only thing that you lost in the changes
there's like a grittiness to
it. For me, I was going to say a little bit of the sag that you had. There was just a little like extra saturation, but that comes from a dying cap because when the filter caps are not passing the electric correctly, you will tend to get sag. And I just from listening to Mike Soldano talk about it, he was like, some people are looking for that, and it's okay, but know that at some point that cap is going to burn out and you're never going to get that back.
Right. And I got to the point where it was failing. So I couldn't ride that wave anymore. I had to, you know, to have a functioning amp, I had to basically wipe it clean and start over again as far as the filter caps go.
I had to replace all the caps on my head too, on my VHT. But again, it's a 30-year-old head at this point.
Right.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And when my guy took apart, Brian up at J&B, took apart my VHT, he found, similar to you found in yours, that it's almost all Mesa parts.
Yeah. So funny. Well, you can tell the story, but it's pretty fucking funny.
So the biggest portion of this story, and you can fill in where you want, Matt, but apparently Steve used to work at Mesa, and he was kind of starting to build heads on his own on the side, and when he decided to branch out and just start VHT, he just took a bunch of parts, and went on his merry way. I mean, obviously he had to buy his own chassis, but you know, a lot of the filter caps, resistors, etc., are all parts that would have been in a Mesa.
Yeah, my filter caps, I actually have them still from when Mike fixed my amp in a box in the back of my car.
They're all box around here somewhere.
Yeah, they're all Mesa branded. It's funny. Yep. Like, he pulled them out and the thing is I don't know about yours, but Mike sent me pictures of it. Mike or Steve Fryette actually flipped them upside down so you couldn't see the Mesa logo.
Yeah, that was the same of mine.
Yeah, you didn't see the Mesa logo until you took them off.
Yep.
That's funny.
Yeah, so basically that Johnny Cash song, One Piece at a Time, that's what our amps are. So
hey, whatever works.
Yeah, they're incredible amps. So
talking about like weird gear shit, I've had to put my Bogner in the shop 5 times since I've owned it. I've owned it about 5 years. It does not like touring. That's what I've determined. Kind of just like you with your VHT. It's already, you know, only 5-6 years in at the point where it's fragile and I can't take it. You know, taking it from room to room is fine, but taking it to a show at this point is just a no-go. The fuse box that they use on these things strips out really easily, and mine is stripped. So depending on the vibrations, etc., the holder will find its way just slipped a little bit, and either it will arc and burn something out stupid, or it just will sit in a position where it's no longer making contact, and then the amp is like not passing signal. So the last time I had to put it in, I was actually doing this Purgatory record, and we had dialed in the perfect guitar tone. I mean, I had a fucking tone boner, and we were about to fucking rip these guitars, and I'm like, something sounds weird, and I walk in the other room to like look at the cabs. I'm like, I don't know, the wires are all going, not like nothing jiggled loose. What the fuck is the problem? I walk back in here, and the fucking Bogner is just not passing guitar signal. And, you know, I fiddled with things, and I couldn't get it back on. So then I had to take it up to Brian, and he's like, I'm going to make a mark, and this is exactly where it needs to be positioned for this thing to fucking work. He's like, so you're not dragging it up to me all the time. Because, you know, it's a $3,000-$4,000 head. I'm not trying to, like, blow up a transformer for no reason. So I totally get what you mean about wanting to save yourself the hassle.
Yeah, I mean, it was worth it to me to search out another, you know, air quotes, more reliable amp to be my workhorse that I can get, you know, a passable. I hate to say passable because the 5153 is an incredible amp, but to get a tone that I'm happy with.
Right. I mean, it's not going to be close. It's not going to be in the same ballpark.
It's just different. It's just completely
different.
I mean.
It's just different. It's just a different texture.
Right. But that's kind of the, you know, you've got a lot of options at your disposal because you're a collector and also a studio owner. So you kind of have to have the tools there. But for me, you know, not until recently did I have some play money to be able to treat myself to some of this stuff. But
treat yourself.
You know, but you know what I mean? Like it's not like I had the disposable income to go out and drop $2,000 on an amp just because I wanted one.
Right.
You know, so you know, I'm at a point now in my life where I'm going to have the VHT and at least one other high gain amp to be able to play live.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, and right now it's the 5153. But you know, I'd like to have some other stuff. Like I've toyed around with the idea of getting Mike to build an amp for me. I've thought about an 800 clone like yours, basically getting serial number 2 and getting the exact same thing. Or
I can 100% put my whole ass behind that idea. Yeah, you might as well go ahead and do it.
It was either going to be that, or I'm really into like Fender Twins and Fender like Bassman. So he's done quite a few clones of Bassman. So something like that, something pedal friendly, you know, something I could put stuff in front of and just kind of, you know, because Mike plays in a really, really gnarly, sludgy doom band, and he plays like Fender amps for the most part, or Fender circuits.
They eat up pedals like it's fucking breakfast.
Oh yeah.
They will just take them and just it's a great pedal platform.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I want, like something that I can really do whatever with. It's kind of, like an Ampeg V4, same kind of thing. Like,
yeah,
right.
You just throw something in front of it, and like
it just comes alive.
Yeah.
So I have a V4 over here on the shelf, and I actually use it for bass mostly. I haven't really even tracked guitar through it yet, but I will tell you that it doesn't matter what kind of bass sound I'm going for. I can get it out of this head, and it's not even the V4B. It's just the regular V4 guitar head, but this thing is loud. I mean, the only amp I own that's louder is my Sound City head. That thing is just, which I got from Mike.
Which you bought from Mike.
Yeah. And he cleaned that thing up beautiful.
Yeah, it looks brand new.
And you know what? My V4, my amp guy Brian cleaned up. I mean, when I got it, it smelled like cat piss along with the two cabs that I got with it. And you know what? He cleaned it up. He recapped, like retubed. I mean, rebiased everything. And this fucking amp sounds immaculate. And you can put anything you want into it, and it sounds good. But the important part is you can also do that with pedals. So when I run a bass pedal, it still sounds fucking great. It gives you exactly the tone you're looking for. There's no fucking dancing around. It's got 6 knobs on it, and I only touched 3 of them.
So you don't need 6. You only need need 1 volume. That's it.
I mean, technically there's 4. So the volume knob, the treble, mid-range, and bass. Those are the 3 things that are on the front of this thing that make there's no reason to have anything else because the amp is that damn good. And then I see amps like the Diesel VH4 that have like 93 knobs on the front of the damn thing, and I'm like, how do you remember any of that?
Yeah. That's how I feel when I look at a Mesa, like a triple rec or something.
Yeah, the triple rec has so many fucking knobs on it.
It's like I don't even know what to do with this. But
I don't get all that either. Like, just give me gain knob, master volume. That's all I need.
I mean, okay, so I have a Framus Dragon. It's got 3 channels in this head, and each channel has its own gain, presence, and volume, along with a bass, treble, and mid-range. But it's pretty fucking straightforward. If I were to chop off the other 2, if I didn't have the other 2 channels, it would be a 6 knob amp, which makes sense. Like, I don't need much less than that, and I don't need any more than that either. But then, there are amps out there that just have 1,000 different options, and you're just like, what the fuck is going on right now?
Well, that's why I love, and one of my favorite amps I've ever owned was my JCM 800. And it's such a simple amp. Like, there's just nothing, you know what I mean? It's volume.
Play.
Yeah, it's volume, gain, an EQ section, and that's it. And that's all you need. And a great amp, that's really all you need. You don't, and I say this, but while my VHT has presence and depth and all the, and all these like switches and that do all these like minor tweaks and bumps to different ranges in the EQ and shit like that. That's all cool, but I don't need it. You know what I mean? It's like, if I didn't have all those options, I could still make a good amp sound great. And that's the beauty of like just a great amp design, that it doesn't take much to make it sound good. And if I've got to fight with an amp, I'm not interested.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've been toying with is doing 555 reviews. Basically taking every amp that I own on this shelf, or any amp that my friends want to bring over and test out, and putting them on the internet with like basically the exact same playing all the time. No pedals, no nothing. Just what does this amp actually sound like if you just straight up and down everything? Put the mids, the treble, and the bass at basically unity or at 5, and put the gain at 5, and just turn it up to the point where you can hear it good, and let it rip. what does this amp sound like? Because if you're trying to test out an amp or you're trying to understand what it sounds like so you can decide if you want to buy the fucking thing, if somebody is playing a bunch of distortion pedals and, you know, they're not playing the same thing and they're really dialing the amp to sound great for them, it doesn't do you any good because you don't know what the amp actually fucking sounds like.
Right.
Yeah, and that's something that you know, I see a lot of these videos on the internet of guys like doing like shootouts with like this amp versus this amp, but they've already got it set up so it's going to sound fantastic for what they're playing, like the style that they play. So it doesn't really tell me anything. Like it's, if you set that, like Len said, if you set that amp at Unity at 12 o'clock on every setting, that's the baseline. That's right down the middle of the road. That's, if it doesn't sound good right down the middle of the road, then you're never going to make that amp sound good.
Right.
And
you're just searching. You're just searching for nothing.
Yeah, you're going to have to force it, or you're going to have to throw pedals in front of it, which I love pedals. I've got a shitload of them. Not as many as Len, but I've got a shitload of them. And I use those to further enhance the sound of my amp. But if my pedal board fell off the face of the earth, I could still use my amp and play and be very happy with it.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, so
like, there's only one do or die pedal that I own, and like if I don't use it, I miss it, and it's the smallest, tiniest pedal, and I actually bought it. I was at the Mesa store in LA. I guess it was about 8 years ago, and I mean this pedal is still working to this day. Never had a problem. The only issue is that the knob fell off. I could put a new knob on it, but it really doesn't matter. But if I don't have it on, I feel like my guitar tone is lacking. I could forget to turn on my overdrive. I could forget to turn on anything else, and it wouldn't really even matter. But if I don't have the EP boost by Exotic on, I feel like my tone is missing something.
Yeah, and that thing's some like the special sauce, man. Like
it's a little sauce.
Yeah.
And people will always come up to me and be like, "Yo, your guitar tone is so ridiculous. It's sick. It's this, that, and the other thing." And I'm just like, "Look, I'm not doing anything special. Here's the amp. I'm playing a pickup that is not even like an active pickup because I don't particularly like active pickups. I got a Mogami cord. I've got just regular old patch cables and another Mogami cord going into my head from my pedals. And the only thing that's on right now is this EP boost. So it's either my hand that you like the sound of or the EP boost going into this head.
Yeah.
Or some combination of the three. That's it. And people don't seem to understand that tone really is in the hands, because like I could play Malone's Head, I could do it, but it would sound like me playing it, and it would not sound like Billy Sanders playing it. It just wouldn't.
Oh, and that's the beautiful thing about playing guitar, though. I mean, it's like you could show me a Billy Club song and I could play the damn thing, but it's not going to sound like him. And it's just like Len, you know, if Descent were still around, you know, he'd be like, "Hey, I need you to fill in for guitar." I could play the songs, but it's not going to sound like Len playing it. And just like if I asked Len to play an Iron Price, like it's not going to sound like me. But
I will tell you, when we played together and it was on, we sounded good.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, if you have the style locked in a certain way, you know, it'll still sound good. It may be a little different. Because I have that with Billy Club because, well, there was the one time we played when it was a different lineup. It was me playing guitar and Malone was out when we played the little Greg show. And that was cool. It was a little bit different. But also because of the way we're spread out now, there are plenty of times when I'll get together with Glenn and just Glenn and I will practice and I'm playing guitar instead. And it sounds a little different. You can tell what it is. It's not like it sounds totally different, but it's just, you know, there's little things that he and I play differently. But that's also why when we travel, you know, a lot of times, like, you know, we would rent amps, like if we go to Europe or something, and he and I would sit there and tweak the amp just because it was just easier that way. And I was always kind of his tech guy, like fixing his stuff and whatnot. But I'm sitting there tweaking the amp just to get the right sound out of it while he just plays through it. And we work together well like that, you know, but everybody's different, you know.
It's great you guys have that, because it's you know, not everybody has somebody that can bounce things like that off of.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we had it happen. we played in Pennsylvania once a long time ago. I think it was not too long after I joined the band, and we played, and like he popped a string, and he used to carry a backup guitar around, but then the backup guitar wouldn't fucking stay in tune. And me, the way I always learned, because I used to break strings a lot, even bass strings. I used to break bass strings a lot.
Jesus.
Well, because I would play hard, but also I didn't know how to take care of my shit when I was younger.
Yeah.
So like, you know, the saddles on the bass bridge are probably all burred up, so like they're snapping the strings. So I got really good at changing strings fast. So finally, we played in Pennsylvania one time, and he tried the backup guitar, it wouldn't stay in tune. He fucking pitched the thing across the room. It was really funny. And then he's like, I carry this thing around all the time, and finally when I fucking need it, it won't stay in tune, motherfucker. And just thing was sticking out of the wall. And I was like, yo, just give me the guitar. And like I was just and put the new string on, tuned it up, stretched it out, and was like, yo, here you go, in like 2 minutes. Because I just, you know, that was how it was for me when I was young. Like, I always had to change my shit fast because I was breaking them constantly.
One of the things that people always will look at me like, holy shit, I don't believe you're doing this, is that I will get to a show 20 minutes or 30 minutes before we're about to hit the stage, I change my strings. And I'm like, look, wow. you don't understand the propensity of me breaking strings to me going out there and looking like an idiot. I was like, I need to just go ahead and change these fucking strings, but if I change them too early, then I'm going to have to come back and really tune them hard later. Right. If I change them right before I get on there, they're going to still have that fresh sound, and I'm going to feel good about it. And I stretch the shit out of my strings. Like, I mean, it's like I got my whole foot in the goddamn guitar. So
I do the same thing.
Yeah, me too.
So by the time I hit the stage, they're perfect. They're ready to roll. And people will look at me like, I can't believe that you are fucking changing your strings like as you're walking on stage. And I'm like, I can't believe you wouldn't do this.
Yeah, it's like every once in a while. I do it jokingly, obviously, but like I'll make a post on Facebook. I was like, guitarists, change your strings. Like just a random.
Absolutely. Bassist, change your strings.
Yeah, and because I don't change mine every show, but when we're active, I change them every other show. I change my strings because, for one, I sweat like a pig when I play. Like I'm just dripping sweat.
Same.
And I'm not always the best at wiping my guitar down before I throw it in my case and then throw it in the back of the van or whatever. And
I wipe nothing down.
And I take it out.
I don't either.
And I take it out of the case at the next show, and it's like growing mold. You know, it's so gross. So, and then
there's a whole nother mat on the fucking guitar.
Oh yeah, it's like Quado growing out of it. But
Can I please have some wipes?
So I got to give my guitar my drink tickets because it's thirsty. But no, like I change mine every other show because after 2 shows. My strings are gross. Like they're covered in like dead skin and like they're dull sounding already. And I'm very sensitive to shitty strings. Like I can hear it immediately. I can feel it. It doesn't feel good to play them. They're like, it's just.
Oh yeah. I hate the feel of like dead strings.
Grimy dead strings.
Yeah. You can just feel it. It just, ugh.
And that's like, you know.
Your hand stinks afterwards.
Oh yeah. It smells like pennies.
Yep.
So like, and I mean no offense because it's not all bass players, but it's usually bass players.
I'm offended already.
That don't change their strings, and I get it. Bass strings are expensive. I get it, and they don't. Some people prefer the sound of, and I've heard this argument of dead bass strings. Like,
no.
I think it depends on what kind of music you're playing.
Yeah, and this is coming from guys who like play like doom metal and shit. So.
Yeah, see, they probably like dead strings. Like I just kind of have a feel for it, Like I'll play and I'll change my strings maybe every couple of shows. And if I'm on tour, like I'll probably change them. When we went to Europe for 2 weeks, I did like 4 shows and then changed them, I think. You know, and I don't sweat as much, like, you know, I'm not like drenching my shit. But
I am pouring
sweat
by the end of a set. Like by the end of the set, I mean, we're talking 15, 20-minute sets. And I mean, I'm puddled on the guitar.
Oh yeah, I got to change my clothes and everything, man. It's fucking gross.
Yeah, I mean, I have to do that, but when it comes to like sweat on the instrument, I don't get that bad, so I can let it. You know, I mean, but it also depends. Like we play some places that are especially hot, and like, you know, you're playing in a basement in Paris with like 100 people packed in like a tiny room. Like, yeah, you know, strings aren't going to last that long, but. You know, I kind of just got a feel for, you know, changing my shit, and I'll change them like every 4 shows or so, something like that.
It's definitely a feel thing, and I know it's different for bass than guitar. I'm mostly just kind of joking, but
I mean, if I was, because you know, I play a lot of guitar, just not live.
Yeah, for sure.
But if I was playing guitar live regularly, I would probably change them every 2 or 3 shows.
That's pretty much where I'm at. Like if we're running out on a weekend and we're doing a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I might not. I'll change the first show, and I might play all 3 shows on one set. But if we're just doing one-offs, like I might play a show and then a practice between the shows, and then another show the next weekend, and then that's it. Like, and then those strings are gone. I cut them off, throw them away. I just know that I'm brutal on strings. Like
what gauge strings are you using?
I play beefy slinkies, Ernie Ball beefy slinkies, which I think are 54
to probably 11.
12s, I think. 54 to 12, I think.
Okay.
And I play the next ones up, which are the heavy bottom, skinny top, which is 56 through 12s.
Yeah.
And honestly, I can get 2 sets, two solid sets on a set of strings. Now,
what picks are you guys using? Also,
I use the yellow Tortex.
I use the green Tortex.
Okay, the greens are what I use.
Yeah,
I like the yellow ones because they give me just a tiny bit more flex than the green ones.
Yeah, they're a little bit lighter, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I used
when I was using the green
for
ones,
bass and the green ones for guitar.
When I was using the green ones, I will tell you, I was like one show set of strings were done.
Wow.
A lot of times, and I gotta get better at this, you'll pull strings off my guitar and the fucking strings are dented from the goddamn frets because I'm fretting so goddamn hard.
I've got a fucking vice clamp for fretting hand, man. Dude, it's brutal, man. I'm probably pretty close to needing a fret job on my telly.
Right. Because you're just burying them.
I'm wearing them out. I mean, like, I'm playing a fucking hardcore band, so it's like 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th fret. Those are all beat to shit. I'm not ripping solos or anything, so the rest of the neck's probably all right. But yeah, like I'm the same way, man. I'm very heavy-handed, and that's actually both hands. Like I lay into those strings, and knock on wood, I don't break a ton of strings anymore, especially now that and like you mentioned, having burrs on your saddles, like it's things like that you don't know about when you're younger.
Exactly.
Why do I keep breaking strings? Well, it's probably because your bridge is shitty. Oh, and it's like fucking broken. It's like laying a string across broken glass. And
that's exactly what it was for me.
Yeah, and then when I was like, okay, well maybe I should buy like a really small file set, and I can just lightly kiss the edge of the bridge before I change my strings, and this won't happen. And that's what I learned, and things like that.
Yeah, I learned a lot of the same things just because when I was younger, I had no idea what the fuck I was doing. Yeah. And I learned about, setting up guitars the right way and looking at the saddles like that. And that's why I used to break so many strings when I was younger. And, learning how to stretch strings out properly, all that stuff. Like I know now, and I give those things,
I give them motherfuckers hell.
Yeah, I give them some serious work before I. And by the way, since you guys both mentioned that you use Ernie balls, I started using the cobalt strings.
Okay.
And they actually last longer and
Really?
stay brighter for longer. They're more expensive, but even more expensive. Like I just bought a 3-pack off of eBay, 3 sets for like $24.
And that's the thing with most strings. I mean, I'm paying like $6-7 for regular Ernie balls. Like,
right.
And even when you say more expensive, like at most they might be 10 instead of 6 or 7. It's really not that big of a difference. So,
yeah, I would suggest trying the cobalts because I started using them like a year and a half ago, something like that, and I noticed a real difference as far as how long they stay bright and how long they last.
Yeah, I'll give them a shot.
Yeah, and that's what I use for guitar. I haven't tried. I don't even know if they make cobalt bass strings, but I haven't tried those yet. I've just been using the regular ones. But for guitar, I definitely notice a difference because the guitars that I have in the house, I have cobalts on all of them now.
It's one of my problems though, because like Descent towards the end got a deal or a sponsorship, but it's not necessarily through any specific company, but it's more like a company conglomerate that gets discounts across the board for things. So like they had like rev amps, but also string companies like Stay in Tune strings and etc. So like I have played Stay in Tune or SIT strings in the past, and I like them. They're okay. What I really like is that they offer a wound G string, which sounds significantly better than the fucking metal cable one that can't stay in tune.
Yeah.
But I blow through SIT strings like I maybe get a show out of them. They just, while they may stay in tune during the show, they can't take the acidity on my hand. So even though I have technically a sponsorship through them for Landmine and for at least when I was in Descent, I still play Ernie balls because they're the ones that stand up to my dumbass hand the best.
And that's kind of where I've landed too. I mean, I've used for a long time, like I was really into those Dean Markley blue steels.
Oh yeah, I used those for a long time.
Yeah, I liked
when I was much younger, like taking lessons and shit. Like I was using the blue steels a lot.
I was using those a lot in like my early bands. Like I liked those a lot. I felt like they lasted longer, they stayed brighter longer, things like that. But then eventually I got away from it, and I've played boomers.
They're so expensive, those blue steels.
They are.
That's what killed me with them, especially when I started playing primarily bass. I'm like, I'm not spending a ton of money on a fucking more than that. A 5-string set of blue steels.
Oh Jesus, I forget 5-string.
They're probably like $50-$60 or something.
Yeah, like I think I got one time. Like Mike from Sworn Enemy gave me a pack one time, and I was like, oh, these are cool, but like I'm not going to keep paying for them.
No, but yeah, and I've jumped around a lot too, and actually, guitar player of the band Gloves Off, I guess, changed what he was. I think the gauge he was playing, and he mentioned on Facebook that he had 5 or 6 packs of I don't even remember what the hell they are, Paradigm or something like that.
The whatchamacallit. Yeah, that's another Ernie ball.
Yeah, they're like a higher end Ernie ball.
Yeah, I think those are supposed to be better than the cobalts.
Right. And he just had a bunch of packs at his house, and he was just like, anybody want these, just pay for shipping. And I was like, yeah, I'll take them. Yeah, he sent me like 5 or 6 packs of them, but I think they're the gauge. I might just give them to you, Len, because I think they're the gauge heavier than what I play. And I don't want to have to mess with the nut and all that stuff and trying to fit bigger gauge strings on my guitar. So
you don't want to bust a nut?
I'll bust a nut, all right. But yeah, no, I mean, like I've tried a bunch of different stuff, and like I'm open to it, but I always come back to Ernie ball, always.
Yeah, those Paradigms are like $15 a pack.
Yeah, it's crazy.
The only other set of strings that I fuck with currently are the DDT strings from DR.
Yeah.
They stay for me pretty well, but I only buy them if I go to the store and they don't have the size that I want for Ernie balls. So occasionally I'll go to my local fucking Guitar Center, and they just someone will have made a run on the yellow pack, and they have like one or they have none, and I'm like, well, I still need strings, so DDTs that is.
I don't even bother going into Guitar Center anymore, man. Like, and that's the only thing I would buy there is I'd go there for strings and picks and little shit like that, and
that's the only reason.
And then I'd wander around the store for a few minutes while I'm there just to see what they have, and then never get anything else. But like, the last like 2 or 3 times I went to the Guitar Center closest to me, they don't even stock the freaking beefy slinkies anymore. And I even said to the guy, I'm like, am I the only guy who comes in here to buy these? Is that why you don't sell them? He's like, oh, everybody comes in asking for them. I'm like, then you guys aren't stocking correctly.
Yeah, seriously.
Everybody's coming in here asking for them. Like, you'd think, oh, maybe we should stock these.
Yeah, so that would make sense. But you know, that's why you're filing for bankruptcy.
Exactly. I would argue that they probably also only run it by some digital algorithm, and they've determined that the store just doesn't sell enough of them to be worth sending them there.
Or there's not enough of a profit.
Right. Or they just haven't had enough of them in there to make it make sense to their dumbass algorithm, and it's their own fucking fault.
Yeah.
Right. And so I don't even bother. Honestly, I just order my strings on like Musician's Friend or Sweetwater or whatever, and I get like 5-10 packs at a time and stock up.
See, I'll just get them off eBay a lot of the time, and it's cool because it's actually usually like a local independent music store that sells a lot of stuff on there.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like I mentioned, because I just bought them a couple weeks ago. I bought like a 3-pack of Cobalt strings off of eBay for like $25. I just order them off eBay usually because you can find a decent deal, and they'll sell like 3 or 4 packs together for a nice price. And the bonus is it's like a local music store.
Yeah.
So it's nice to throw them a little bone.
My problem is, and this is really just my fucking problem, 100%, is that I always forget to buy them till it's too late. It's not like I'm not sitting around thinking, oh, I should like buy some fucking from some fucking picks, or I should buy some strings, or for the studio sometimes I'll have a band coming and I won't be thinking about it, and then I'm like, oh shit, I need drum skins, or I need to have some sticks in here just as a backup in case they don't bring enough and we need to keep this session going. Like I utilize Guitar Center for my own mental laziness because I just can't remember to do it online ahead of time.
Right.
But I actually was in here the other day and I cleaned up the drum closet, which was supposed to be a vocal isolation booth, but it's turned into just like a random flop house of just everything that's like I don't want out in the thing. And I actually found a stack this high of semi-used or brand new drum heads. I have enough heads that I don't need to buy heads for the rest of forever.
Wow.
And I mean, I have snare heads. I got fucking every single size of tom heads. I've got an extra kick drum skin. Like, there's a little bit of everything back there. So the next time I need one, I have to remember, don't run to the store and buy it. Go into the back stock.
Yeah. See,
there's
I'm the
also
opposite.
Like 400 sticks back there.
Yeah, I'm always doing inventory in my head and like looking around, because now that I have the back like studio room, which is where I have this set up, I've got my picks around and whatever else. So like, I know if I'm running low, I'll stock up, because I do the same thing with picks. Like I just order like a bag of like 72 picks or something, and just have those around. And like, we actually had like the Billy Club picks, and if shows ever start happening again, I'll probably re-up on those. But other than that, I just have like bags of Dunlop picks sitting around.
That's one of my biggest issues, is that picks for me are like earplugs. I just fucking lose them like constantly. I don't know where they go, and then there's just none around. Even if I buy like a big bag of them, I will run out in a week because I just leave them everywhere. I leave them in my pockets. I leave them Gary has a big bag right in front of him.
I got one.
It was like a bag of weed,
the green
but it was
ones,
just
and then I got another bag of the blue ones.
If I need a pick, I just go to my dryer.
They're all sitting on top or inside
that's always
it.
the way.
Yeah. No, they're sitting on top of my dryer because every time I take clothes out, I'm like, oh shit, there's picks in there.
Oh.
And I top of the dryer.
Mine are
I
just
always
in
used
the
to do
washer
that when I had
somewhere.
a dryer. But I also with the green picks, like I shred because I'm not so hard with the fret hand, but with my right hand, like I shred through those fucking Dunlop picks. Like there's green dust all over my guitar.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just like, that's why I stuck. Over the years I tried different picks when I was younger, and I stuck with the Dunlops because they last. Because if you get like those regular like celluloid like Fender picks, like what I started with,
oh yeah, those are
like I just shred the fuck.
Yeah, me too.
Like there was nothing left. They'd be in pieces after like 2 songs. That was guitar. Forget about it on bass. Bass would be even worse. Like it wouldn't even last a song on bass.
I actually had to use one for a Descent show, and I blistered through it took one song, one of those Fender medium picks.
Oh, I couldn't.
The shit just shattered in my hand.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to do it. I'm at the point now, like I'm so used to having my shit, like, but that's why I keep plenty of it. Like I always bring it, and luckily, Malone uses the same picks that I do. So worst case scenario, like I'll borrow one from him or he borrows one from me.
And I've gotten to the point too where when I know we have shows coming up, I'll take a handful of picks. I actually score them with a razor blade too.
Oh yeah,
they don't move.
I learned that from I think it was Jeff from Sworn Enemy. Because he and I were talking about just anything gear, because that dude's also a gear nerd.
Oh yeah. Well, he texts for a lot of people.
Oh yeah,
Shout out to Jeff, because Jeff is awesome.
Yeah, he's a great dude.
Like I watched a video the other day. It was like Living Color doing like a live stream, and I look over to the side and there's Jeff, because Jeff texts for Vernon Reed.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, there's Jeff.
Wild life, man. Between just being in Sworn Enemy and then what he does for actually for a paycheck, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah. I don't know if it was him or somebody else, but they were like, yeah, just take a razor blade and score them, then you have better grip on them. And I can't play without doing that now, because I feel like I'll just drop them. I'll lose picks all day long. So
yeah, I've seen people that do that. I actually have a collection of picks that I've gotten at shows over the years, and I have a Sepultura guitar pick that's all scored like that.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of wild.
Never actually tried it.
Yeah, it just helps with grip. It's just real light. Just do like a little checkerboard on either side, and it really, really helps with the grip, especially after like the brand new Tortex picks. It's almost like they have like a powder coat on them.
Yeah.
Right.
Once that wears off and it's like slick, I drop them once I start sweating. So that's why.
By the time it wears off, my shit is already like worn down, so I just fucking throw it.
Well, that's the thing. Once I round that tip off, I throw it away. I don't like them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be. Away.
But I don't like the really pointy ones. Like they make the ones that are like arrows. I can't do that.
Yeah, I can't do that either.
I feel like that's like a shredder.
Is that a shredder thing?
I don't know.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, it's a shredder thing. Though that or like the jazz picks, like the smaller
little
ones.
tiny ones. Yeah, I can't stand that.
I'm like, fuck that. I'll fucking eat that by accident.
I'm not Tic Tac.
Yeah, like no.
So one of the things that people always make fun of me for when playing shows is that I would rather break my fucking back and bring a good cab than to play on some jank bullshit at a show.
Yep.
Like, they're like, it's just a cab, it doesn't matter. And I'm like, the fuck it doesn't. It is one of the, like, so we've talked about tone a few times in this conversation. One of the key determiners of your tone is the cab you are playing out of. And if you tell me that's not true, you're fucking lying to yourself. You can change the tone of any amp just by changing what cab it's plugged into, because it will force you to either change your EQ settings, or you're just not going to get exactly what it is that you were looking for, because that cab can't even produce it. So there are times when we would go play places and it was a crapshoot because I wasn't able to fit my cab in the van, or we weren't even taking a van and we were all just jumping in my truck and going somewhere. And I was just like, fuck, I'm going to have to play on some absolute turd piece of shit cab because most people don't care about these things. And I mean, I know for a fact that Matt knows what I'm talking about and subscribes to the same theory.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I play through. I have an orange 412, and that thing weighs like 8,000 pounds. But I would much rather, like you said, I'd rather shatter my spine and bring that cab with me than have to play through somebody's B-52 cab. But the thing is too, is it's funny because whenever we get booked on a show, one of the things I'm going to do is either ask the promoter, like, is there any kind of backline, or I might reach out to a band that I might know on the show, like, hey, do you guys have cabs? But then I turn into the asshole because I'm like,
which cab is it?
What kind of cabs do you have? And then I'll take it a step further. What speakers are in your
Yep.
and they're like, does it matter? I'm like, yes. The fact that you just asked me that just tells me I'll bring my own cab.
Yeah, exactly.
If you don't know what speakers are in your cab, I don't know if I want to play it. Being honest with you, like,
I own 15 cabs. In all 15 cabs, I can tell you every single speaker that is in them and in which position they sit. Because some of them I have modded on my own by taking them apart and changing the speakers that are in it. Some of them I've just opened up to understand what the fuck is in there so I know. I am 100% interested in what is it that I'm hearing and why. And that goes to exactly what Matt is talking about. I asked the exact same fucking questions when we would go out on the road. So, hey, can I borrow a cab? Cool. What kind of cab is it? All right. Do you know what speakers are in it? And then the answer is always no, is whatever came in it. I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'm researching on the internet what the fuck nonsense speakers in here.
But the thing is I can't always even trust that because
that's true. Because
if somebody's like, oh yeah, I've got some Mesa I've had since the '90s. I'm like, did you buy it brand new? No, I bought it from some guy. I'm like, shit, I don't know what's in there.
Some guy swapped the speakers on it or something.
Right.
Well,
and
go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say that happens more often than you'd realize too. Because there's a lot of shitheads that on the used gear markets that will buy like a Mesa 412 or an Orange 412, knowing that they have V30s in there, that they could sell those V30s for like $100 each, and then just throw some bullshit speakers in there and then sell the cab, thinking like, oh, nobody's gonna pop this open to look and see if the V30s are in there, and then sell the cab for $600. And then meanwhile, they just screwed over somebody because they put some fucking dog shit Radio Shacks in there.
So I have a story about this, and it is that has nothing to do with me being mad or am I calling anybody out. But Lenny sold me an orange OR 120 and a cab, an orange cab to go with it. So I still have this orange cab, and I'm like playing the cab because the head was broken, but I bought it knowing the head was broken. Like that was ahead of the curve. I knew the head was broken. I was going to have to get it fixed. Okay. So I bought the head and the cab because I just wanted to have it. So I put the head in the shop, gave it to Brian. He fixed it. But meanwhile, I had the cab, and I'm like playing the cab, and I'm like, okay, it's a 78 orange cab. It's beat up. It's been through the war. And he said to me, when he gave it to me, he was like, I don't know what's in it. And I'm like, okay, that automatically tells me that whatever was supposed to be in it is probably not in it. So I pop it open. The speakers don't have any labeling on them at all. I don't know what the wattage is.
Was there a little Payless logo somewhere?
But like, I just couldn't get a good tone out of them. So I spent some money. I went on eBay, or I guess it was eBay at the time because Reverb didn't exist 9-10 years ago. And I ordered 2 vintage 30s, but I bought new stock vintage 30s, not Mesa stock vintage 30s. That's one of the things you got to know is that Mesa has their own version of the V30 that sounds different than all the other ones that you can get in different cabs. So
Right.
like they're voiced just slightly different. So I bought just 2 vintage 30s, and they would match what would have already been in Matt's orange cab. And then I also purchased 2 Eminence Legend GT75 clone speakers and put them in, and I put them in an X pattern. So there's a V30 and a Legend at the top and a V30 and a Legend at the bottom, and they're crisscrossed so that the cab projects a little bit of everything in each direction. Right. The cab sounds really fucking cool now, but when you go to mic it, you have to decide, what am I going to be listening for? Am I listening for that GT75 sound, or am I listening for the V30 sound, and pick the right side?
Right.
So like if I take that to a show, I'm like, yo, don't mic that side. That side is for texture only. But yeah, I mean, when I popped that sucker open, I would have been mad if it had like a really cheap, cheesy speaker in it. I ended up selling the speakers that were in it for like $100 total, and it was great just to get some money in and ship those things out of my house, because either they were going to do that or they were going to go in the trash can. But yeah, I mean, exactly what you said, Matt. Sometimes there are people out there that are running scams because you know what's supposed to be in there, and then you get it and it's not it.
Oh, there was a couple times where, back in the day when I was really on the hunt for a Mesa cab, and I ended up with 2 of them, that I there was a guy on Craigslist selling one, and I said, yeah, 'cause he was selling it for it was like $400, which is a good price for a Mesa cab. Looked like it was in good shape. The speakers could be worth almost that much.
Yeah.
So I hit him up and I was just like, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you pop the back open and take a picture of the speakers? I wasn't accusing him of anything. I just wanted a picture. And he got super defensive about it. And I said, all right, you know what? I was like, you know what, man, I'm not interested. No, thanks. And he was like, oh, no. It just seemed kind of funny that you don't trust that it has like the real speakers in there. I'm like, that's not what I'm saying. There's different years that they made these things. I'm just curious what's in there. That's all. I'm just curious. And then, and then he just disappeared. The post went away like nothing. So you got to be careful when you're buying shit like this. You just never know what you're buying. Yeah. And especially if you go to somebody's house to pick up a cab and you're like, hey, before I hand you the stack of cash, I want to pop the back. And then all of a sudden they're getting nervous.
Yeah, of course.
Whereas if it was like me, I'd be like, sure, I'll fucking pull the goddamn screws out for you. I don't care.
Yeah. I mean, I've sold a bunch of shit in my life. Like I'm not out to scam anybody. I'll be straight up when I've got some, if there's something wrong with it, whatever. But my orange cab, when I bought it, I traded it with some band. I don't remember who they were. They were on tour, whatever. Like I was trading a Mesa cab for it, and I was just looking for an orange cab because I've always wanted one. And they were like, yeah, I've got this old kind of beat up orange cab. Would you want to trade? I'm like, sure. And it was a 90s orange cab, which was still a pretty good era for those. And, I popped the back open. It had all V30s in it. Like some people really, really care. Like there's UK made V30s and there's Chinese made V30s. It had all UK in it, which are more desirable. And I ended up buying an orange 212, also brand new. And when I went to sell the orange 212, I took the new V30s out of that, put them in an X pattern in my 412. So I had 2 brand new V30s and 2 well-worn V30s. And I put the old ones in the 212 when I sold it. And I told the guy, I'm like, look, speakers are older, but it sounds fantastic. It did. It was just a little darker. And, that cab sounded incredible for a long time, but, I've been playing it for 6-7 years now, so they're all the speakers sound the same now. So
right, they're all broken in.
Yeah, I'm almost thinking I kind of want to either swap 2 speakers out and get to something else, or I don't know if I want to fuck with the recipe too much because I really do like how it sounds. So it's kind of, you don't want to tinker too much.
Yeah, you get too far away from where you want to be.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I've cabbed myself out at this point. I don't even I have cabs that are in other locations because I don't even have space for them. One of them being at Matt's house.
Yeah, I still owe you some money for that too, by the way.
Whatever. I'm not worried about the money portion, but I'm glad that you're getting some fucking use out of it.
Yeah.
So I got that cab that Matt has because I was trolling Craigslist. So one of my things in life is trolling Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace, etc. Like anything where people are selling gear on the cheap. And I purchased a Yamaha 4x12 from a guy in Philadelphia for $75. And I then took it apart and rewired it because he said it didn't work. So I had to buy all the new wiring and a new input for the jack and do all the wiring. And that cab sounds fucking awesome now. Doesn't it?
Nice.
It does. Yeah, absolutely does.
But I don't normally like GT75s that much alone. But in that cab, they sound good.
I do. Well, it's funny because that's what comes in Marshall cabs, right?
Yep, it's the typical thing that you can get in a regular old like 1960A.
Right. And I do like a Marshall cab. I really do. I just feel like sometimes they lack a little low end. Like they're mid range. Like which Marshalls are great for. They're great mid range honk to them. But for like heavy, chuggy hardcore, sometimes Marshall cabs don't do it. But something about this cab, man, it's gnarly. It's a really cool and
so that was the time that Soldano was building cabs and heads for Yamaha.
Right.
So that cab is technically a Soldano cab. So they have like a T1000 or something like that head that is not identical to an SLO, but it shares a same structure, and people will buy them because they sound similar to an SLO. And they made up to specifically that cab that you have.
Okay.
And that was kind of the reason why I jumped on it, because the price was so fucking low. And I was like, it even has the right switch on it. Like the back panel switch is if you look at old Soldano cabs, they have the exact same layout. It's a different sticker on it, but it's the same layout.
Right.
And I was like, this is definitely exactly what I wanted. But I have so many cabs now, it's hard for me to keep something around that I don't typically mic up. So I was like, fuck it. Matt, if you want a cab, you can just borrow this one.
You actually brought it to my house.
I did.
From New Jersey all the way to Maryland.
Well, I mean, so
you were coming anyway.
Listeners, what you got to understand is that me and Matt make a pilgrimage to Atomic Music at least twice a year to just see what the best pawn shop for musical equipment on the planet has to offer. This place is like a fucking grocery store for music equipment. It's huge.
Almost all used.
Yeah, almost all used. All kinds of amps, guitars, cabs, like recording equipment, live sound, piano. Well, not pianos, but keyboards, violins, like whatever. If it's music equipment, they got it. They got all the drum kits you could fucking throw a stick at.
I was going to say, you're in the market for a piano now?
No. I had a piano, but I left it at my ex-girlfriend's house when I moved out, and I intended to go back and get it. And then when I mentioned it to her not that long ago, and I've been out of there for 10 years as of like 12 hours from now.
Damn, counting it down.
Well, all right, so I bought my house officially December 10th, 2010. So tomorrow is the anniversary of me purchasing my house, and that's also the anniversary of the day that I moved out of her house. So I left my piano behind. I had gotten this piano. It was free. So somebody put it on Craigslist. And again, me mentioning Craigslist. Can you imagine? Guy puts it on. He's like, hey, all you have to do is come pick it up. So I call two friends, and I get a fucking moving truck, and we wheel this fucking stand-up player piano up the fucking thing into the back of the strap it down, and we drive it back to the place I was living with her, and then we wheel it back out of there and into the garage. And it sat in the garage for a little while. When I left, her new boyfriend, who's now her husband, they moved it like one layer into the house, so it's actually in like the breezeway. I don't know how they lifted it into there because this fucking thing is heavy as shit. But I asked not that long ago, maybe 2 years ago. I was like, I left that piano there. I'd like to come get it. And she's like, you're gonna have to ask my husband if you can have it. And I was like, really?
What?
Yeah, it's my fucking piano. I just left it there, and we use it, and you left it here. And I'm like, okay, all right, I see. And I didn't make a big deal out of it because it's not like I spent any real money. I think I spent like $40 on renting the van.
Right.
But I should have a piano in this studio. I intended to have a piano in here, but it's not here.
Damn it, Len, you're going to have a piano someday.
Matt, are you going to get me a piano?
I'll help you move a piano.
Dude,
if I can move my orange cab, I can move a damn piano.
Oh, man.
So I have a question for you, Matt.
Yeah.
Because you were talking before about how you mainly use a Telecaster and Fender amps and stuff like that. Now, that's not the typical combination for the type of music that you play.
It is not, no.
Which is kind of interesting. So I want to kind of get into that a little bit.
Yeah, so I've always liked Fenders. Like, I've always been a big Fender guitar guy. Like, I started with a Strat. That was my first guitar. Eventually, I kind of leaned more into, like, the Les Paul body shape. I was more into that. Like, I had all the everybody's got their LTD EC1000s. Like, that's the kind of standard hardcore guitar at this point.
Right.
Len's got and Len's got the real deal. He's got the actual ESP, but
I've got 3 of them.
But eventually I started kind of coming back around to wanting to play a Fender. And it's funny because I always thought, like, man, nobody plays heavy music with a Strat. Nobody plays heavy music with a Telecaster. And then I remembered, like, wait a minute, I'm pretty sure Obituary played Stratocasters. And then if you look at, like,
Trevor always played a Strat.
Yeah, so I'm like, shit. Like, I remember watching the video for Turned Inside Out, and I'm like, these motherfuckers are playing Strats. And I'm like, okay, all right, so this can work. And then on top of that, other than Helmet, one of my favorite bands is Unsane. And Chris Spencer plays Telecasters. So it was just kind of like, okay, if he could play a Tele and play these gnarly fucking songs, like, I can make a Tele work. So then, on top of hardcore metal and all this shit, like, I grew up listening to pop punk in the 90s just like any other fucking dork, And so one of my favorite bands was No Use for a Name. And the guitar player is Chris Shiflett, who is now in Foo Fighters.
Right.
He came out with a signature guitar with Fender, which was a Telecaster Deluxe. It was kind of modeled after the 72 Tele Deluxe, which had these weird Fender, they called them wide range pickups. They're kind of humbuckers, but his actually had real humbuckers in it. So it's kind of a weird hodgepodge of design where it's a Tele, but it's got a Strat neck, and it's got like a Gibson Les Paul like electronics section.
Okay.
It's really weird. It's like it's hard to explain. I've changed it since then, stripped it down even more, where now I only have a bridge pickup and I only have a volume pot. No, right. I have a tone. No, I have a tone pot. I have a tone pot, and I have a kill switch on it. But I just love a Fender guitar because it feels like a fucking club in my hands. Like, it's like the neck feels like a baseball bat. It's a huge chunky neck. That's what I have big hands. Like, that's like, whenever I pick up like more of like a shredder, air quotes, guitar, it feels so small in my hands, and it's hard to play for me. So I've kind of really shifted more back to Fender. And on top of that, like Len can attest to this, there's something weird and special about my guitar. Like, it's got its kind of own sound to it too, which,
dude, there's no guitar that sounds like that guitar.
And like we've like you were mentioning earlier with like Malone's Fender amp, right? You could have say his amp is serial number 2. You could play serial number 1 and serial number 3, and they will sound completely different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like I could have grabbed and it's funny we mentioned Guitar Center. I bought my Telecaster from Guitar Center, brand new. They had 2 of them there, of the same guitar. I picked up the first one. I played it, and I didn't really care for it. I put it back on the wall. I grabbed the other one, played it, and I was like, wow, this one feels so much better, and that's the one I took home. And I've been playing that guitar ever since, and I will never, ever, ever sell that guitar.
Wow.
I've done so much customization and modification of that guitar. I've had several different guitar guys work on it and do things for me, and it's a perfect guitar to me. But to anybody else, it's just a Mexican Telecaster. You know what I mean? There's nothing particularly remarkable about it. It's not worth much money. It's just kind of special to me and me alone. But it's one of the key ingredients to the sound that I've tried to cultivate in this band. And I don't know that I could do it with another guitar. I've had other guitars and I've played them. Right now I've got a guitar from a smaller company called Jericho, which
okay, yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah, I got it through a trade, but I've got it's a Tele body. It's still like a Telecaster, but it's their version of it. It's got a thinner profile neck, and it actually does have an active pickup in it, which I'm also not a fan of active pickups, but it's a Fishman Fluence, and that pickup's actually pretty cool. Those Fishmans are good pickups. Yeah. Like I'm not a big fan of like the EMG pickups or anything, but like they're a little too sterile for me. Like I need something a little more character and texture.
Yeah.
But the Fishman, it's cool. It reacts more like a passive pickup to me. But I just even when I vibe with that guitar, I always go back to that Fender. It's just, man, I love Fender guitars. Like, and I kind of want to. I think my next guitar, I want to get a GNL, which is Leo Fender. After he sold Fender to CBS, he started a company called GNL, which is kind of the true Fender at this point.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to try some GNL guitars next, I think. But
yeah, GNLs are real nice.
Yeah,
they're expensive, but
they are.
It's because they're good quality instruments. I've played a few of them.
Yeah, they're a very good friend of mine named Matt Spence, who's been kind of my gear Sherpa for a long time. He kind of turned me on to GNL. Like he had a few. He got through trades and they played fantastic. So it's just I'm a Fender fanboy, unapologetically. So I think I always will be.
My issue with the Fender is that neck that you're talking about. I have a fairly large, like, long hand. It's not I don't have like a meat hook, but I have a pretty big hand. But there's something about the way those necks are that it causes my hand to cramp and me not to be able to play. And like I haven't been able to get past it. And maybe it's just that I haven't done it long enough, but I don't want to suffer long enough to get used to it.
I find the exact same thing the other way around. If you hand me a Gibson, because before I got the Jericho, I had a Reverend guitar, which was essentially it was like a double cut Les Paul, like kind of like a junior kind of body, and it's basically just a Gibson scale length and neck profile, and my hand would cramp up so bad playing that guitar. It's kind of why I got rid of it. It was a cool guitar, like I liked it, but I just could not vibe with it because my hands would just cramp up like crazy. And you hand me like an Ibanez or an ESP, probably the same thing would happen. Like it's just different. I'm so used to that Fender neck at this point, playing a different neck profile. It's almost like it's not like relearning to play guitar, but it's kind of not far off. Like it's not just plug and play for me. It's not plug and play for me.
Yeah, because they always used to say you have like people that are Gibson people versus Fender people. Like I'm personally an Ibanez guy, but
sure, yeah.
The three Ibanez guitars that I own are all completely different. I have a 7-string, I have a 6-string RG, and then I have a really old, like early 80s Roadstar, which is basically like a Strat.
Right.
and it has the thicker neck like that, like what you're talking about. It has like a Strat kind of neck, but it also has, it's like 2 singles and a humbucker, or no, I'm sorry, I think it's 2 humbuckers. Okay. And it has a certain sound to it, because I actually like using it to record stuff sometimes, because it's got a little bit of a different tone profile to it. So if you layer it under another track, like, it actually brings it out a little more.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but it's basically a Strat, and it's early 80s. It's not like the Ibanez shred machines that came out later on. You know, it really does look just like a Strat.
I'd love to get my hands on this is something else that I've been kind of interested in lately, is the lawsuit era Gibson clones.
Oh yeah, Ibanez made a lot of those.
Oh yeah, like, I'd love to get an Ibanez Les Paul or a Takai Les Paul or something like that. Greco's another company.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Ibanez Les Pauls are really nice. I think they only made them for a few years in the 70s.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they did, and then they got threatened with the lawsuit, and they pulled the plug on it.
Right, and you can still...
oh, they're still floating around. I've seen them on Reverb.
And they're really not that expensive either.
Yeah.
And the quality's great. Like, the quality's fantastic on. They're just as... they're probably in the ballpark of a 70s Gibson Les Paul, but you're getting it for, a third of the price.
Yeah, no kidding. Because those, the authentic Gibsons are an arm and a leg at this point.
Yeah, and even though I just said, like, I don't vibe well with Gibson profiles, I would still, my dream guitar is still a 70s Black Beauty Les Paul. Like, just black. Like, I don't even like gold hardware, but for some reason on a black Les Paul, like, gold hardware looks so nice.
Yeah.
See, I'm gonna blow everybody's fucking minds right now, but I've gotten to the point where I actually just don't give a fuck about guitars at all. I care about amps. I care about amps. I care about cabs. I don't care about guitars. Like, me and Matt, 2 weeks ago, was it? We went on a hunt trip. I had sort of floated the idea to Gary, but it was just not going to work out due to COVID, etc. And we went down to Atomic, and, like, there's, I don't know, 700 guitars in this place. And I walked the aisles 5 times, and not one time did one guitar even, like, really call my name. Only one did a little bit, but it was just like, it's kind of cool looking. And then I looked at where the fucking knob was, and I was like, I would never be able to play it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just going to keep moving. Like, I didn't even pick one guitar up the whole time I was there.
I don't think I did either.
But it's like, I'm not even... I look at the rack of guitars that are in here, and I'm like, yeah, they're all guitars. Whatever. I don't give a shit anymore. Like, I've lost the love of, like... They all basically look like one of 4 things. And it's like, it's either a Les Paul look, a Strat look, some weird, like, Strat or Tele amalgamation, or some, like, super odd shape. So
some
a V,
some super pointy monster.
Yeah, some pointy nonsense.
Some BC Rich.
And, like, I'm like, they all do the same thing. They make noise. Any of them will work right now.
Well, I think you've also, since Descent, the demise of Descent, I think you've really, really shifted more into audio engineer Len and less guitar player Len.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to be guitar player Len again, but it's kind of hard to do in COVID.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Even if it was out of COVID, I mean, so I played guitar. I might have mentioned this, but I played guitar on Monday, because when I was doing Descent, I was also occasionally doing a band called Man Alive. Our singer Kwame moved to San Francisco. The band subsequently took a hiatus. We're back now, and we're called Dead Torches, and it's everybody that was in Man Alive except for Kwame, but we have his best friend singing, Sean, or as people in New Jersey may know him, Straight Up. He's taken over vocal duties for Men Alive. We've changed the name to Dead Torches, and I went over and I played 3 songs on guitar. You know, they wanted me to record the tracks on my own and send them over, but I learned the songs last January, and then I played them again in June one time, and I'm like, I don't remember how these songs go. Can we just get together and like you show me the riffs real quick and I'll play them. So I did 3 songs in under an hour, learning and playing on a fucking recording. So it's not like I don't have the skills to play the fucking guitar. I just don't have any reason to do it.
Yeah,
so, like,
and I kind of found myself in the, you know, obviously nobody's playing shows, so, you know, with Iron Price, like, we didn't really have any reason to play. Yeah. And, you know, with other members of the band, like, we have to be very careful with COVID, just like anybody else. Mm-hmm. You know, Travis has kids, and, you know, Brian's got his wife to worry about, and then, you know, Marty lives in Philadelphia, so he doesn't make it down here for practice that much, and neither does Dennis. Really, it's just Brian, Travis, and I that practice most of the time. And so we kind of just called it off for a while. We just kept paying for our studio. We weren't really using it. It was more just storage. And, you know, about a month or 2 ago, Travis floated the idea of starting to practice again, and we've been slowly starting to work to write a few new songs, because we've got a split that we're going to be putting out hopefully sometime early next year. And, you know, time to knock the rust off. And I imagine anybody's going to have to deal with that. Anybody that's in any band, or, you know, we were pretty bad at first when we started practicing again. And, you know, it's getting a little easier now, but another problem that I had is, you know, and like, I've been pretty honest with this, about this with my friends, but I've been dealing with, you know, with depression and anxiety a lot in the past couple of years. And, you know, I've thankfully opened up to the idea of therapy and things like that. But along with that came the reignition of my love of playing guitar, which I had lost. You know, I didn't even think about playing guitar for a long time. So now that I've got that back, I've been playing a lot more at home, and really, really just thinking about playing guitar and thinking of riffs while I'm at work, just like, oh man, I wish I had a guitar so I could remember this and shit like that. That's stuff that I used to do when I was younger. Like, man, I wish I had a guitar. And having that back in my life has been fucking fantastic. And it's like, the reason I bring this up is because it kind of bums me out when you're like, yeah, I just don't care about guitar. Like, yeah,
I don't know.
Like, but I get it. I get it.
I want to care about guitar, but I don't have a reason to care about it the way that I used to.
See, Len, I want to get you, like, I know we talked about it before, but like, let's do one of these quarantine cover things, man.
So Travis,
that'll get you playing
Iron
guitar.
Price, had Lucky Lover from Phil Collins and Philip Bailey, and I learned the riff, but I didn't want to track guitars over like cell phone drums.
No, he'd have to get that record properly to make that work.
Right. So then, like, part of my issue is I hate programming drums. I hate it. It's one of the hardest things to do because I'm not a drummer. So what I hear in my head and translating that into a beat is really, really tough for me. So I can't get inspired enough to write a riff alone, and I'm not playing with any drummers, so I'm just like spinning my wheels. So I just put the guitar down. I don't want to waste it, basically.
Yeah, I mean, you get to a point where you're probably just frustrating yourself too. So
yep.
Yeah,
and I have so much stuff with the studio going on these days that it's just like I don't even have time for this.
The drum programming thing is like my next big project, because I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing, but with trying to record demos of stuff at home, like, I've got to figure out how to do it at least on a basic level, because I need to figure it out.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like, I've got all the tools at my disposal. Like, I asked Len, like, what do I need to do this? What do I need to do that? And I've downloaded everything I need to, at least at a basic beginner's level, be able to record at home.
Right.
And I have the program where I can make drum sequences, and I just can't wrap my head around it. Like, I'm not a drummer, so it's like,
yeah, I have the same problem. Like, I could play, you give me something with strings, I'm good, but like, if I sit behind a drum kit, I just look around and I'm just like, I can't even be here right now.
No, and luckily the program that I have has like pre-made, like, maybe 40 or 50 beats in it that I can at least use passably.
Well, let's get into it. What's your recording setup like at home?
Oh, it's just I have like a Focusrite Scarlett Solo, like just a little interface.
Okay.
And I use Reaper to.
Okay.
It's free. I mean, I know there's better stuff out there, but until I'm confident in what I'm doing, I'm not going to spend a bunch of money on this stuff.
Yeah, no, I understand that, because I bought. I decided between the podcast stuff and like wanting to demo stuff at home. I ended up buying a new computer, and I bought a Mac, so I started using GarageBand, and that's pretty much what I'm using at home. Like, I can plug in, I have a cable that I could plug in direct and use the amps in GarageBand, or I got for Christmas from my girlfriend, I got a PV practice amp. There's like a modeling amp. It has a bunch of different PV amps all programmed into it.
That's cool.
And it has a USB out, so I could just plug it directly into the computer and record that way.
Right. Yeah. So and I've got a handful of amp. What do you call them? Are they impulses or no? Impulses are the cabs. But I don't know the terminology. But like the amp models. That a lot of the free ones, like there's a lot of them are crap. Sims, yeah. A lot of them are crap, but there's a few decent free ones out there. What's the one? Emissary something.
Yeah, that one's not too bad.
Yeah, it's decent for high gain stuff. It's good enough to demo stuff. Like I wouldn't use it to track like real guitars.
Right.
But
yeah, it's not like we're doing full on recordings at home.
Right.
I gotta tell both of you for a fact, I have put out multiple recordings in the past 18 months with amp sims on them, because no matter what I did to a real amp, it could never give me the clarity I needed because of the bad what am I gonna call it? Bad pickups, bad picking, bad this, that, and the other thing.
Right.
Amp sims are way more forgiving in certain situations than a real amp ever would be. And I don't subscribe to only using amp sims. Some people do. But they have saved my ass.
Well, the thing is, they're all tools. It's all a tool. So if you can blend an amp sim in with a tube amp, like if I hear a recording and I can tell it's an amp sim, and there's a lot of them that I can, I'm probably not going to like it as much because I just love the sound of a tube amp. There's something special about it. But if you blend it in there and it's like it's adding something to the recipe, I'm never going to hate on that. Like, use whatever you can to make the end product be better.
Well, it's like drum triggers. It's like sometimes they're obvious, but sometimes if you mix them right, you won't even notice. And I'll also say, and I'm sure Len will back me up on this, amp sims have gotten a lot better over the years.
Oh, they definitely have.
The original amp sims were a fucking joke.
Yeah.
And
they sounded like they sounded like a Disturbed record.
Pretty much. And the current block of amp sims that have been coming out are just absolutely sick. But my problem, the only thing I have an issue with them for real is that it's a static picture of an amp. It's not like... So when you go over to an amp and you start sweeping the gain knob, all kinds of things start to happen. And when you do it on an amp sim, I feel like they haven't gotten that part right yet. Same with any of the other knobs. Like, they take a picture of it, or as you mentioned, Matt, when people have like cab profiles or whatever they're called these
impulses.
days. Impulses. Yeah. It's literally just a singular impulse snapshotted in time, and that's what the quote unquote tone of that speaker is. But in reality, what you need is the constant fluctuation of that speaker. So when you hear an amp sim through an impulse, it always has these static resonances that real speakers do not have. And it's not as like a real, going through a real speaker and a real amp just is going to sound more warm than the sterile coldness of going through these sims and impulses, because it's just like a snapshot. It's like taking a Polaroid picture. So I try to avoid using them as much as I can, or if I do have to use them, blend them in, because alone it doesn't sound that great to me. But there are certain styles where it just lends itself really well, and you kind of just got to go with it.
Yeah, well, that's kind of like in some of my tone chasing for a while, I really had in my head I wanted to use 2 amps at shows, which that's fucking, unless you have to, that's really not smart to have to carry all that shit around with you. But yeah. I actually wanted to start using a solid state amp and blend it with my VHT.
Mm-hmm. For that super crunch. Yes,
and I actually, I sold it to you actually, and I don't even think you have it anymore.
No, I sold it too.
Yeah,
but Gary has one.
Yeah, I bought the Randall, was it RG120 or whatever I forget what the model is.
RG100, yes.
RG100, that's what I have.
Yeah, so I bought one. Again, I brought him up before, but my friend Matt Spence, he got it in like this huge trade lot. He got the head and the cab, the matching cab. He didn't even want it, but the guy was like, "No, it's part of the deal. You got to take it." So he brought it to his house, and he used to live right down the street from me. And he was like, "Hey, you have any interest in this amp? I know it's kind of like," he knew that because I'm a big Crowbar fan. He knew that Kirk had played these things previously, early Crowbar was with these amps, and I was just like, well, I don't really want the cab, but he said the same thing to me. He's like, look, it's a package deal. You got to take them both. So I don't know. I think I paid him like $150 for the half stack. And I really did like how that amp sounded, and I just didn't like it wasn't quite loud enough or something like that. And I just eventually decided I didn't want to have to carry around 2 amps, so I ended up selling it to Len. But that there's something in mixing in like the kind of computer process sound with more organic guitar sounds that it brings out more to it. Like Len said, it brings that extra crunch. It brings more clarity to it. And that's why I can see everything's a tool to me. Like some tools aren't great by themselves, but if you use that tool with this tool, you can make something cool.
Yeah, well, that's like what I was saying about that Ibanez Strat that I have. Like by itself, it sounds pretty good, but if you mix it, and over the years, I mean, Len knows, but I've kind of learned it too a bit, just fucking around with different things. Like sometimes if you mix certain guitars, certain amps, stuff like that, you end up getting a nice complement. You know, certain sounds will complement each other and end up making it sound much, much bigger.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So Muttley, you heard the full length I did for Iron Price. I
yes.
think you sent me a message saying that guitar tone. I think that was like the fucking thing you said to me.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the things that I mentioned, because it definitely had a different sound to it, and it sounded fucking heavy as shit. I forget what song it was. There was one song specifically that I was like, damn.
So what we did on that record was we set up Matt's VHT in the main room. Well, we set up the cab in the main room. Right. And, we dialed it and dialed it and dialed it and dialed it for a while. But, I mean, he already had his settings, but we were just nitpicking. And then we were like, all right, well, what are we going to blend with this? And I think we pulled my Jet City down.
Yeah.
Isn't that what we did?
Yep.
And I isolated that cab in the ISO room, and we put it under some blankets and really isolated it from the room that it was in. And I just put a singular 57 on my Mesa. Not Mesa. It was the Marshall 1968 cab, and I kind of pointed it right at the fucking brightest spot, and then backed it up like a half an inch to an inch, just so that it wasn't like a big pick. Like an ice pick in your ear. And then we blended the two of those things together to make that guitar tone. I think we used the same overdrive on both amps, but the amp, the Jet City was not. We didn't have the gain cranked. We had the output cranked.
Yeah, so I don't remember if we used my overdrive or if we used one of yours. I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure we used one of yours, whatever was on your board at the time.
It would have been the Green Rhino then.
I think it was the Green Rhino that we used, and if it wasn't that, it was the Ibanez regular old Tube Screamer from back in the day.
Yeah, it could be.
But we sent the same signal to both things, and I think the Mesa cab had two mics on it. It had like a 57 and maybe a 421, or maybe I put a ribbon mic on it to really get like that thick thundery low. And I just blended the three microphones together using a program called Auto Align, which allows me to find the perfect phase relationship between two sources, three sources, however many sources I want. And that's it. I mean, there's nothing special to this guitar tone, but it sounds like a goddamn monster coming out of the speaker.
Well, I think it's a combination, like we've said a million times before, of the amps, the guitars, the hands, all that stuff. Because there's certain things I notice with the guitar style, certain things that I like because it's kind of similar to shit that I do, stuff like just ringing out open strings and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I notice that, and that's kind of stuff that I dig because I do some of that stuff myself, and I pick up on it right away, and I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's a like, for me, there's a lot of like thought into the texture too. Like it's leaving strings ringing, letting things layer, letting things breathe. That's the thing too, man. Like the space between notes is just as important as the notes themselves, and that's something it took me a long time to learn. You got to know when to just let something breathe and let a chord ring out. Like I'm a huge fan of just a big chord just ringing through a gnarly amp, and that's definitely something. Those particular songs, like on that record, 3 of those songs were like new. A lot of the other ones were either reworked or were an older session that Len was able to, with his magic, make sound like it was part of the same session. But yeah, like it's a lot of that, and that's kind of the direction the newer stuff's going too. It's just kind of more care taken into the this is gonna sound so pretentious and like I'm jerking myself off, but like the soundscape of it, where it's like the texture and the layers of guitar. Like I really want it to be a huge, massive sound, and that's kind of what I've always shot for, and Len's certainly enabled me.
Well, I mean, Gary mentioned it earlier. We did actually use a Fender Twin Reverb on that record.
We did.
Pretty much, and we used it throughout the whole record other than the 2 older songs that I resurrected, because anywhere you hear like a weird shimmery chime noise going on, it's actually that Fender with, I think, the Strymon that you had?
Yeah, which I just got rid of, yeah. With the Strymon Big Sky, or Blue Sky. Yeah.
So we layered that in as like basically like 4th, 5th, 6th layer underneath the main guitars, just to make the whole thing shimmer at times.
Oh, and that's exactly what I'm talking about with layering the stuff and giving it a different type of sound.
So one of the things that I actually have a problem with as an engineer is that, and not with you, Matt, specifically, but that bands have no imagination. They just wrote one riff and they're like, all right, we're going to come record this thing, and like then they are worried because at the end it doesn't sound fun or imaginative or anything, and it's because they haven't spent any time thinking about how it all works together. They're not attempting to make a fucking record. So one of the things that we have in common, Matt, is that we did that split together. Descent did a split with Iron Price a few years ago. And not only do the songs each sound good by themselves, the whole 6 songs as a total sound great together because me and you conferred back and forth to make it seem like it wasn't an intentional split. Like we were working together to come up with the texture and tone of a release.
Oh, there's definitely a sonic theme through the whole thing. I mean, it's unsettling sounds layered in with all of the. When you really listen for it, like there's a common DNA through the whole thing, and I still love going back and listening to that split. I think it's
one of the greatest splits that's ever come out.
Jesus.
I enjoy your songs as much as I enjoy the songs that I was involved in creating and recording.
Well, I think it's of the best material either band's ever done. I mean, like my favorite song to play is still Anti-Venom, which is the first song on the split.
Right.
And I think that Descent's best material is on that split.
I don't know if absolutely our best materials on the split, but I do think that the essence of our band at that moment in time is on that split.
Let me rephrase that. I think my favorite snapshot of Descent is from that era.
I don't disagree with you. There are things about that era that weren't as tight as I would want them to be, like from a band playing perspective, but for an attitude perspective, that was the time that Descent was the most on fire.
Right.
Well, sometimes you just catch a certain moment, and I think that's what you guys really did. With Billy Club, we have had moments like that, but it hasn't been recorded the same way. But it's also chemistry. Like, it's a split, but you guys are obviously friends, and there's a relationship between the bands. It's not just 2 random bands thrown together.
Right.
Yep.
It's it's the same way that Billy Club kind of had a chemistry with like EGH and Irate, and anytime we would play together, I mean, they did the split. They did the split with EGH long before I was in the band. But if the bands were to do a split later on in time, it would probably have that same kind of chemistry because that was the chemistry that we had between the bands as friends, and you guys had the same kind of thing.
Oh yeah, I mean we played, I don't know how many shows we played together, and we were all friends ahead of time, and it was just kind of like a natural. It made sense, at the time we were both.
But also, it sounds like you guys actually put a little thought into it and put a little work into it to try and make it a cohesive thing.
Oh, absolutely.
And it shows when you listen to it, because sometimes you hear these bands that, go on compilations and it's all just thrown together, and one song sounds really good quality-wise, and then another one sounds like absolute shit.
Yeah.
Like, I think, Len, it may have been the episode we did with Tom where I was talking about my old band recording New York's Hardest 3, the 2 songs we did. Most of those tracks were recorded at the same studio by the same people, so they had a certain cohesion to it.
Right.
It wasn't just, okay, this track sounds great, this track sounds like a fucking boombox track.
So
there's a lot of compilations like that.
We talked about it with Monty. So the compilation that Thorns of Reality, which technically is the first song from Descent on the split with Iron Price, is named Thorns of Reality.
Right.
We got back together with the original singer of Descent and put out a song for Black Lives Matters for a compilation that Monty was doing from Race Trader. And, if you listen to that, everybody recorded somewhere else. It's old recordings. It's live stuff from This Is Hardcore. It's a big mishmash of whatever is mixed. Like, there is no cohesion to this release when it comes to sound. There's cohesion when it comes to subject matter, but it gets to that point where you're talking about it just things come at you from all kinds of angles, whereas our split did not do that.
Right. That's the kind of stuff where like you're gonna skip some tracks because I like this song, but the next song sounds like shit, so I'm just gonna skip it.
Right.
Or not even put it on my phone.
Prime example of that. I don't know why it just popped into my head. Maybe it's because you're wearing the Vinny Value shirt, but the Warzone tribute. Did you ever hear that? The Warzone tribute.
Yes, not in a long time though. I remember it, but
some of it was really cool. And man, some of those songs it sounded like they were recorded on a talk boy 3 rooms away.
Yeah. Yeah, because a lot of that was leftovers and B-sides or stuff that was recorded for other things. Yeah, no, it just popped into my head because you're talking. I was like, it starts with the Stout song, like Stout Covered Is Your Choice, and it's like it sounds so good. And there's other bands on there that sound fucking fantastic, but there were a couple I was like, who greenlit this? Well, that's because sometimes with compilations they just don't put much thought into it, or it's just leftovers, like I said.
Yeah.
People record extra tracks and they end up on 3 different compilations or whatever, but there's no cohesion to it. So
right.
Exactly like you're talking about, exactly like what I was talking about. You get one track that sounds really good, and then the next one sounds like it was done on a Fostex 4-track in a basement.
On my first Sony.
Yeah, with a Fisher-Price microphone. But that's the way a lot of compilations are. But and splits. Since we're talking about your split is different because besides the chemistry between the bands, you guys actually tried to work together to package it as a single solitary thing.
Yeah, I and Len and I had talked about this a lot. We wanted it to almost feel like, like an album that happened to be released by 2 bands. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Right.
It was like it's one thing, it's one big thing, but it happens to be 2 bands performing on it.
So, and one of the secrets to the sound and like creepiness of that record, well, there are actually probably like 3 main themes, but we actually sampled the sounds of the planets into all the open air between songs. So every time a song ends, the sound of a new planet or a repeat of the planet before shows up. And then we did noises, and my noises for the Descent side were deeply affected by the things that I worked on with Matt to create theirs. I was like, oh man, that was cool, but I can't do what they did, but I got to do something else. And I ended up buying a whole new pedal that became the Descent sound. Like every single overdub that has ever been done for the band since I've been in it has had that pedal on it. It's an old Noise Blood pedal, and it's just, if you're seeing Descent, that's the noise you're expecting to hear if I kick out and I'm not playing the rhythm riff.
That's cool.
Yeah, I don't know how I stumbled upon it, but I remember like reading an article or something where they just decided to point some kind of space microphone at each of the planets, and they recorded the weird sound that they got that bounced back, and it's bizarre, haunting, weird noises. Like I don't even know how to describe it. It's just really, really fucked up, weird sounding stuff. And then it was literally just that, and then Len and I on our hands and knees with a pedal board, just letting a guitar feedback and just twisting knobs until we came up with a fucked up noise. So
you guys are scratching my nerd itch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, listen, you're talking about planets, just like Tom with the astronomical units. Like,
right.
I dig it.
Yeah, we had Tom on a couple weeks ago. Do you know Tom from Hundreds of AU?
I don't think so. Like I've actually been digging back through your guys' episodes. I listened to the Sunny one, and then I listened to the one from last week, or last episode today,
where we just yapped about nothing.
Yeah.
Well, not nothing, but
Trump sucks.
Yeah, that's. I was actually going to make a joke. I was like, man, there's been no political talk at all in this episode.
Oh God.
I don't think
start.
my head can imagine right now. So just getting into that. But
We're trying to go cold turkey.
But
as long as we can, it's hard.
Yeah, so I didn't understand. I always thought it was hundreds of AU, but just like saying it like that, and I wanted to know what AU meant, and he explained that it's actually astronomical units, and
right.
It's the distance thing.
And I was like, "Oh yeah, nerd stuff."
But yeah, so like I think you guys are Jupiter. We use Jupiter a lot between your songs, and I think we use Neptune between all of our songs, and then the blend between your stuff and the Descent stuff was actually Uranus. So,
that's right.
Whoa.
So like I took those sounds, but then
Careful,
like
you're about to get us canceled.
Hey, if we're not getting canceled, then what are we doing?
I'm amazed we got this far without getting canceled.
Yeah, episode number 31. So Matt would set up all these pedals and just like make noise, and then we would sit there and like hunch over these pedals, and each one of us take a knob to like make it squelch, and like literally we built every noise on that record. And then on the Descent one, since I was by myself, I actually bought a ring modulator pedal from Electro Harmonics, and it just sends out like beeps and bloops, and I use those to like, and then like 4 different pedals plus that old blood to like make all the stuff. There are sections on that thing that sound like an organ, like an old school organ, but it's actually me playing the same riff on all 6 strings. So I would just either find the harmony or I would play the octave, and it just sounds huge, and I'm not able to like replicate it live. So I was actually carrying around a sub and up pedal to allow me to get that like multiple layer thing.
You might be able to do it with like with a POG or something like that. I don't know if you have one, right?
Yeah, I have it's basically a sub and up. It's the same thing as the POG.
Okay, yeah, because you can do all kinds of wacky shit with those.
Yeah, I tried and it was close, but
right.
I'm not good at dancing on stage with a whole bunch of fucking pedals. And I'm a play it and just set it and forget it guy.
Right.
I mean, it's hard when people are flying around too. It doesn't help.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, looking back on that record for me, that was some of the most creative time I've had in the studio, and I always look forward to working with Matt because I know that we are not going to cut corners when it comes to ideas, trying things, and actually cultivating something that, even if it's not 100% what they would consider perfect, because like I heard the new Every Time I Die today, and technically it's probably perfect, but it just sounds a little sterile for me because of some choices that were done in engineering, and I don't make those same choices because I would rather have things live a little bit more than to force them into a box for loudness. Right. So I know when I work with Iron Price that we're going to create something that has repeat listen value. If you get into it, you're going to enjoy it, and every time you enjoy it, you're going to find something new to enjoy.
Well, it's kind of like, and it's a little cliche at this point, but we've always kind of considered you as the, like the 6th member, because we'll write the songs, like the skeleton, the meat of the songs, the meat and the bones. And then when we come to you, we're at this point, we're all, not to put any pressure on you, but we're almost expecting your input,
right,
into what like we can do to, shape things to sound better. This or even riff ideas. Like if something kind of sucks, like I know you're going to tell me it sucks.
I've played bass on your records.
You have
not all of them, but I have played bass on your records because I'm like, and even Pat played bass on one of your songs because he was like, that riff would work there, and you're like, yeah, you're right, because
and you
know what? It's about finding the right vibe, and who cares how the vibe got there, run with it.
Right. No,
That's one of the problems I have, is that people come in and they're just like, my song has to be this way. And there is no room for discourse or adjusting things on the fly. People are just like, nah, it's got to be this way because I wrote it that way.
No, I'm not that guy, man. Like, I want what's best for the song. If that means having some fucking asshole named Pat play a bass part, or whatever it takes, man.
Well, I think that's the difference between dealing with, there's guys that have a studio and are just an engineer, and there's guys that are different levels of producer.
Yeah.
Some
absolutely.
people, but there's also some bands, because I've worked as a producer with a few bands, and I've also managed bands and kind of played both roles at times. And one of the issues that I ran into is that there are some bands that want to do things their way and are just not open to ideas. And there are other bands that want those ideas. Just like there are some producers that are really just going to sit there and hit record and record whatever you're doing. And there's other producers, some of them are there's varying degrees of being hands-on. And Len tends to be sometimes more of a hands-on guy if you're open to it.
Well, I ride the line.
Yeah, I think Len is great about feeling out the situation and knowing what is wanted and what is.
Got to read the room.
Yeah. Like he knows if a band comes in that they're like, these songs are done, they're perfect. We don't want anything changed. We just want to press record and then press stop and then mix it, and then that's all we want from you.
Well, that's what I was saying. They're like, some bands aren't open to that,
right?
That extra input, and some are. Some of them want to hear, no, I don't know if that part's right. Like, maybe you should change that. But other bands,
I just did a pop record, well, like a pop punk / emo record, and I'm not necessarily into that style, like, with 2 feet at this point. There were times where I liked it a little more than I do now, but they came in and they had the rough sketch of all their songs and they played them all, and then we had another separate day where just the guitar player and I were sitting here, and I helped this kid write, I don't know, 6 solos or overdubs to make the record pop. It's like the most interesting pieces of the record, because it's like flashes of things that would have just been empty strumming otherwise.
Right.
And he wasn't even necessarily thinking about putting things in these places, but my ideas were just enough that he would A, be able to play them, and B, they fit, and C, they were like more interesting than nothing.
Right.
And it's just like little shit I heard in my head, and he was open to it.
Right.
And he was like, oh, that's sick. I'm like, all right, cool. Like, let's run with it. And I love those sessions. I hate sessions where people don't know the parts, or they can't agree between the two guitar players how something is played. Like, can we just agree that one player plays all the fucking rhythm parts so they match? Please.
And not to get too inside baseball, but that's kind of where Iron Price is at this point. Like, nothing against Brian, but when we record, I come in and I just play all of the rhythm stuff. Like, the end product is always going to be better live. There's some slop to it. It's not as critical.
Live don't matter.
When you're recording like a record, you want it to be right, and you want it to be not perfect. I don't want anything to be robotically perfect. If that's the case, then I just let a computer play my parts. I don't really care. But if I think the end product, and it's not every band, but some bands, to have one guitar player play everything, it's going to be tighter. Right. It's just going to be tighter.
So in Descent, I actually did not play any guitar parts until the Athame release. And that was because I wanted to focus. Well, I played overdubs, but I didn't play any of the rhythms because I wanted to focus on the actual recording. And trying to record and play at the same time can be a real pain in the ass. So, I let Tony do all the rhythm guitars and most of the overdubs, and then I just handled like the weird shit. When we came up to the Athame release, Tony had left the band and we were down to just me as guitar player. So I sat here one night at the studio and I recorded, basically press record, start playing. Fucked up. Press record, start playing. Fucked up. And I worked my way through the songs like 4 times basically. And then I edited together the best 2 takes for left and right guitar that I could from those 4 takes total. And then I utilized other pieces to make certain pieces pop a little bit more. If you don't want to take the time to actually build the best record that you can, you're just throwing away money. And it hurts me as an engineer because I don't even charge that much. And people don't even want to take advantage, want to rush in and rush out. And they think I'm going to just like make magic.
Well, that's what I think when it comes to the songwriting input also, because that was the problem that I had when I managed bands. I managed a couple of bands, and they were bands that asked me to manage them, but then felt like they didn't want the input.
Yeah, what do you want?
Why are you asking me to manage you? And luckily, I didn't really run into that when it came to studio stuff with a couple of bands that I worked with as a producer. But managing, I managed only 2 bands, and with both bands, I ran into the same problem. And I just thought to myself, why am I here? Why do you want me to manage you and then act like, oh, I know what I'm doing? Like,
well,
what's
then
the fucking
I'll
point?
leave. Like, let's go.
Yeah, like, what do you need me for?
Right.
Like, you just think I'm going to help you get booked on some shows and that's it? Like,
I'm here for the ideas, son.
Yeah. Like, but that was also because guys within the band, like, one guy thought he knew everything and another guy was like, no, I want your help.
So
they just sabotaged themselves.
So, Matt, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Your most hated amp that most people are like, would cream their shorts over. Like, there are amps on the market that people just absolutely love, and you can't find a reason to love it.
Mesa rectifiers.
That was a quick answer.
You stole my answer.
I think Len already knew the answer. That's why.
It's my answer as well.
Yeah, I and it's personal because I have heard and seen and played with tons of bands that played them, and they sound fantastic. The sound of the amp, I don't personally have any issues with, other than it's not for me. But actually playing one, the few times that I've attempted to play them, I have never, ever, ever been able to get a good sound out of it. Ever.
Really?
It's a very subjective thing, but I've found them to be very brittle sounding, like, if that makes sense. Like, it's not, and they're squishy. I always feel
brittle
weird
and
describing.
Squishy.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like, it's always one or the other. It's either too squishy or it's like crispy and crunchy. Like, I feel like a dickhead trying to describe a sound, but
so I have a single rec in the studio that I picked up on a Craigslist or whatever, and I fucking hate it. Like, everything about it I hate. Like, it's a 50-watt head, and usually I really enjoy a 50-watt head because they break up a little bit easier, but they're still nice and loud. I cannot find a sound in this head that is usable. Not one fucking sound. So over the course of the next 3 to 6 weeks, I intend on replacing all the tubes in the head, because I do know that they are old. So I'm wondering if maybe I'm just hating it because I'm working with subpar performance material just on the things that I can change myself. If I change these things and anything in there redeemable, I'm going to sell the amp, because I am not going to get into rehabbing things on the inside, because maybe the inside isn't what I need to rehab. It's maybe that I just don't really like the sound of this fucking head.
And that's I mean, that just is what it is. I mean, like, I've tried to play multiple rectifier amps, and I'm with you. Like, I've never been happy with my own personal sound coming out of one. It's just an amp circuit that I don't think I'll ever vibe with, and I've accepted that. Like, it's, you know, like the 1 year that we played the main stage of This Is Hardcore, like, it was backlined with Mesa stuff. I brought my own amp. I played my VHT, but a lot of bands just jumped up there and played those the rectifiers. And
I did.
Did you? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, oh man, I'm glad I brought my amp, because I did not want to have to play one.
I've played 3 or 4 This Is Hardcores, and the first couple times I played my Famous Dragon, but the last time I played, I was also running sound, so I had to be on and off stage, and I couldn't be worried about my equipment and this, that, and the other thing. Even though we were the first band that played, I could have easily brought my head in that day, but that means I had to, like, babysit my head all fucking day.
Yeah.
And run all this stuff for Sonny. And that is not a complaint about running stuff for Sonny, but just like, there's too many variables going on.
It's a lot of work.
I just didn't want to be worried about it. So I was like, it's a Mesa, it'll sound fine. And I got up there and it sounded okay. But I spent probably 40 minutes dialing it in before the show started.
Because you had that luxury.
Right. But if I had to just jump on there and play,
like, if you weren't the first band,
after 6 bands had already played on it, that's a crapshoot right there.
Well,
there's no way that I would have been able to dial that thing.
We were supposed to be the opening band, but then he added 2 bands before us last minute, so we ended up being the third band the day we played the big show. And I'm just grateful that I brought my own amp, because I don't know what the hell I would have sounded like, you know what I mean, playing out of that Mesa. I didn't have no clue. I mean, it wouldn't have been good, I don't think.
I think because I spent so much time dialing it, it was okay. Mm-hmm. But if I listen back to it, it does not sound like what I would have wanted to sound like.
Right. And also, and this is why it's completely subjective, because I also think Joe Schmo hardcore guitar player is going to be perfectly fine playing out of that amplifier. I don't think it's really going to make a difference to the average hardcore band.
I don't think it's going to make a difference. So, like, we're talking literally this whole conversation for the last 2.5 hours has been about the 0.0001% of people that actually pay attention to anything. Because, you know, I could record a song, play a mix for somebody, and pan everything up the center. Just everything, just dead center, and just get a small balance going. And people are like, sounds great. Because they're not listening to music the way that any of us listen to music.
Right.
And they're certainly not listening to the minute character differences between amp to amp to amp. To them, it's a distorted amp. It sounds fine. So, yes, exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, I just think that if 15 bands play on that stage that day, well, that's even a smaller sample than I would think, but like 14 of those bands aren't going to give a shit that it's a Mesa sitting there. In fact, they're probably going to be stoked about it.
Right.
And just because it's a, you know, it's a sought after, well regarded amplifier. Like there's a reason people love those things, and for some reason, and now I know you also, I just don't like them. I don't care for them, and
it's hard. It's hard to dial in.
It's all subjective, because they don't. Yeah. I don't mind them. They're certainly not my favorite amp, but oddly enough, like I feel the same way about Marshalls. I've never liked playing through a Marshall.
I didn't like Marshalls till recently, but that was because
Ooh,
That was because I would get into practice rooms where they had old beaten up 900s or old beaten up 2000s that just had been through 16 wars and never had a tube changed, so they all sounded horrible. And also, I was looking for something that a Marshall doesn't really bring you without a pedal, and I didn't know that as a young Padawan tone chasing.
Yeah, but I'm a weirdo because I'm not crazy about
pedals,
the early 5150s either.
Yeah,
and I'm not a big pedal guy, but to me, my top amp would be a PV Triple X. But I do appreciate Soldanos and amps like that, but I'm also not nearly
that's a different level, man.
You guys are.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing is there's nothing wrong with any approach to any amplifier. It's all subjective.
Right.
As long as it makes you happy and you're happy with the sound that it makes, that's all that matters. That's all that matters. If I loved my Pitbull and Len thought it sounded like shit, I would be like, I don't care what you think because I love this amp.
Right.
It would hurt my feelings because I respect Len's opinion, but I would have to tell him, like, look, tough shit. I love this amp. You're going to record it because I'm paying you.
Hey, I just did a record for a band, and they absolutely 100% unequivocally needed to use their Zoom pedals. They didn't want to hear about any of these $1,000 worth of amps on the wall. They just wanted a clean channel to put the Zoom through because that's their tone.
That's an interesting flex right there.
I
kind of have to respect it.
I swallowed my pride, and I set that motherfucker up, and we recorded it. And I sent them a mix, and they're like, we fucking love it. And I'm like, great, whatever. I would have never done that for myself, but if you're happy, I'm happy for you.
Yeah.
But man, there's something, and I'm kind of the same way, man, with Marshalls. Like my first real tube amp was a 900, and when I got it because, when you growing up playing guitar, like Marshall's the amp, like Marshall, everything Marshall. You see everybody's playing Marshall, so I wanted a Marshall. I got the 900. It was great at the time, but then as I got a little older, I realized how much I was lacking in my sound because of that amp. And then I gave up on Marshall until I played an 800. And playing an 800 changed my whole perception of Marshall amps. And there is something magic in that circuit, man. There's like all the clones of it that are out now, and just like Len said, that amp that Mike made, it's a clone of an 800. They just take pedals so well, and they can be as gnarly as any other amp as long as you put the right pedal in front of it. It's not if you play in a freaking death metal band. Well, that's not accurate because a lot of death metal bands played 800s, but you know what I mean? Like you play in some like super, super heavy band and you have an 800 with no pedal in front of it. You're probably not going to like it.
Right.
Like you're not playing in some of these new style gent / like metalcore or deathcore bands. You can't play an 800 without a fucking pedal in front of it. But like, I just bought that Friedman. It is a Marshall. It's a JTM.
Yeah.
But it's a fucking hopped up JTM. I am in love with that sound of that amp as long as I'm not playing, like I would never play it for Descent.
Yeah.
Or something along that line. Maybe I would use it as a layer to get more texture, but
mids out of that amp, I'm sure.
Right, but I would never use it by itself. Now, if I was doing like this project that the three of us have talked about doing, which is like a handsome-y type of band, that is exactly the amp I would play.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
So, it's all about context and picking the right piece of gear for the thing that you're trying to get done. Like, if I was going to do a super heavy band going forward, I mean, obviously I have the Bogner, but I might actually look into one of those Omega Granifiers or a Rev Generator 100 or 120 because they do high gain so well in a way that none of the heads that I have here do it, because people have been building on and on and on. Or even the driftwood amps, they're fucking insane. So like, it's all about finding the right tool for the job you're doing. If you nail in a nail on the wall, you're going to get a fucking hammer, not a screwdriver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of my thing too, because I don't play guitar live.
Mm-hmm.
I can count on one hand the number of times I've played guitar live. I'm a bass player mostly. So I could talk to you about how good my Dark Glass head sounds, but...
Oh, man, Dark Glass is so sweet, though.
Yeah, Dark Glass stuff is just top of pops, baby.
I mean, that was a great purchase for me.
Well, you'll be able to shine when you get that prick pad on there.
Yeah, well, Pat will be on soon, and we will be talking about all kinds of bass stuff and getting Pat canceled. Pat canceling us, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Who can get canceled first?
All of us.
So I want to take this conversation in a different direction, and it's kind of backwards, but I don't care because we don't work with a structure. But Matt, when you first, how did you first start playing guitar? And what got you into it? I know you mentioned the pop punk stuff earlier.
Yeah, well, I mean, even before all that, honestly, it was like grunge, like Seattle grunge stuff. I mean, like I grew up loving Soundgarden and Alice in Chains and Nirvana. Like those were my favorite bands when I was young, and not so much Nirvana anymore, but Alice in Chains and Soundgarden are still two of my favorite bands.
Nice.
When I was in middle school, I'm younger than you guys. I'm 39, but when I was in middle school,
you're not that much younger than us.
Well, I mean, I was in middle school in the early 90s, so
most people are younger than us.
So, I was listening to that kind of stuff, and my middle school happened to offer a guitar class instead of like taking whatever general music arts class. I could take a guitar class.
Oh, wow.
They just had acoustic guitars, and but it was a guitar. I could play a guitar.
Right.
And it just really stuck with me. It was probably 6th grade when I started playing, and then I started. I got for 1 year for Christmas. My grandmother got me a subscription to Guitar World magazine because it had all the tabs in it.
Yeah,
and that's how I learned. I just songs that I liked. I just got the tabs and learned how to play them.
Okay, that's exactly the same thing for me.
Yeah,
yep.
It's. I think there's a. It's probably a couple generations at this point, but that's how a lot of people got into guitar. Was thanks to tablature in the back of Guitar World.
I was never good with reading music. I was just always good with the tabs, and I would rather just listen to something than figure it out, because a lot of what I did I learned by ear.
Yeah, me too.
But so when it came to the grunge stuff, like it started with like Alice in Chains and Soundgarden.
It started with Nirvana, really, because it was more simple. It was more simple. Like, when you dig into it, Soundgarden was way more complicated than a lot of those other bands. They use a lot of weird tunings and shit.
Right. Yeah.
But they're who made me want to play guitar. Like learning Nirvana songs, and at some point like learning like Green Day, like that. Like,
right.
That's a lot of people's gateway to punk. From my generation, like being slightly younger than you guys, like that was honestly one of the first air quotes punk bands that I really heard was in was 91 for me, something like that.
Right.
So things like that were gateways to other things, and then I'd say probably 93 or so, 92, 93, our local rock radio station played, probably 92, played Helmet. And I heard the song Unsung on the radio. And
dude, I was so in love with that song.
Yeah, so something about the percussive style of guitar, like the da-na-na, da-na-na.
It's like a goddamn machine.
Yeah, it was
a machine, but it wasn't like industrial, like
no.
but just, I learned later, who Paige Hamilton is, but I just was mesmerized by how that guitar sounded. It was just mechanical, but like, whatever, you know what I'm saying? So
I know what you're saying. I think now, I don't think a lot of people realize just how different that band was.
Oh yeah.
For music.
Yeah.
No helmet, no snap case.
Right.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It just does, like, they don't, if snap case gets together, they don't sound like they sound that the way we know them, because if they had not heard helmet, there's no fucking way.
Well, there was that whole spin-off there, because without, like, helmet went that direction, but you had snapcase, you had quicksand, like that was a lot of that stuff spun off from helmet.
Yeah, and that was kind of my jump off point for chasing tone. Not that
because also helmet had short hair.
They did. They were not
confused a lot of people.
Yeah, they were not metal. Like they were not the stereotypical metalheads for sure.
Exactly.
Well, shit, they were like art students. Like Paige went to not Juilliard, whatever, some like arts, like fancy art school for jazz guitar. Like he had a full ride for jazz guitar, and that dude can play his ass off. Like you listen to Helmet, and you just think it's like dumb, kind of like whatever, but that dude can play. Anyway, so like that was kind of like the start of my tone quest, even though when you're in middle school in the early 90s, it's not like you're going to go out and, not that he was playing VHTs yet, it was shortly after that, but it's not like I'm going to go out and get a $3,000 amplifier when I'm in middle school. So I just kind of emulated what he was doing and a lot of what I was playing when I was started to write my own stuff, even though it wouldn't be evident if you could hear it. But he really is like my number one guitar hero, like it begins and ends with him. And as corny as it sounds, I told him that to his face. I have a picture with him. Like when I saw him at one of their shows, like he actually like took a picture with me and endured my punishing, cause oh man, I tore him up over VHT amps, man. I talked to him for like an hour. But yeah, man, like that's like the, that's where it all started for me. It's like grunge and helmet.
When did you see that Helmet for the first time?
Warped Tour.
Warped Tour?
96 or 97.
Yeah. So it was first Warped Tour.
Yeah, that was the first time I got to see Helmet. And they were touring
was it
for
the first?
After
it might have been the second. I don't remember.
I think it was the second one. Yeah, because I would have been in probably 10th or 11th grade at that point. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's just hands down the most important band in my life.
Such a good live band too.
Yeah.
I've seen them a few times. I saw them. First time I saw them was probably opening for Faith No More.
Okay. Yeah.
They toured with Faith No More on Angel Dust, and I already knew them at that point.
Right.
Because I remember Meantime, and I remember
Betty.
Well, I'm thinking the songs on Meantime. I remember In the Meantime and Unsung were all over MTV, like Headbangers Ball and stuff.
Yeah, those were the two big ones off that record.
That's how I knew them was Headbangers Ball / 120 Minutes, because they were one of the few bands that were played on both.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I didn't get a chance to actually see. I was just too young when I first got into them. But I didn't get a chance to actually see them until they were touring for Aftertaste, which I do love that record. That's a divisive.
I love that record too. I think a lot of people don't like that record, but
I'm 50-50 on that record.
I don't care. I think there's a bunch of good songs on that record.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the turning point for them. Even though they kind of came back to that more meantime-y sound on like Monochrome, which pretty much anything after Betty, you're gonna find people that hate the records. I mean,
that's because Betty set the bar fucking high.
Oh yeah.
I remember seeing them on tour for Betty, and they were just so damn good.
just so heavy, man. Like his tone was just nuts. And then John Stanier's drumming.
Oh, he's a killer drummer.
Yeah, I mean that dude is a fucking monster, man.
Well, that original rhythm section.
Yeah,
monstrous.
Him and Bogdan.
But I'll say this also, having seen them from early on, when Aftertaste came out and Trainer didn't play on the record, but
yeah, he joined after. He joined right after. Yeah,
and it was crazy to see, and I haven't really watched YouTube videos of them on that tour, but I remember seeing them live with Trainer, and Trainer gave them a whole new energy.
Yeah,
because Trainer was running around on the stage and shit, and before that they were just kind of standing there. But when Trainer joined, all of a sudden, like, the rest of the band kind of picked up the energy a little bit.
He kind of injected a hardcore energy to that band too.
Yeah. Orange Nine is one of my favorite bands of all time. So.
I fucking love that band. Yeah. Love Orange
Nine. I like Orange Nine more than I like Burn.
Me too.
And please don't let Mike hear that.
Yeah, Mike will be very upset about that.
I love Burn, but I
love Burn too.
I love both bands.
Yeah,
I don't know if I could really pick one or the other, but they scratch a different itch for me.
Yeah, they definitely do, for sure.
Driver Not Included.
That's what I'm saying.
That first EP and Driver Not Included.
Yeah.
Absolute fucking masterpiece.
I actually got to see them on that same Warped Tour, I think, with Helmet. I think Orange Nine played.
They did.
Pretty sure.
Yeah. Well, then maybe that was the first Warped Tour, because I know Orange Nine definitely did the first Warped Tour.
Yeah, that might have been the same one.
I saw them in the parking lot of the Nassau Coliseum.
Yeah, because they did the parking lot of RFK where the Redskins played down here. Yeah, because that first year it was in the parking lot, and the second year it was actually in the stadium.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, they did it. They did it in the parking lot of the Nassau Coliseum for the first one, and then after that, I think they started doing it on Randall's Island in the city.
Okay.
So it was a little different. They weren't doing it in the parking lot anymore. But I definitely remember that very first one, because Orange Nine played, Sick of It All played. I forget who else played, but it was an awesome. It was the Warped Tour. It was a whole new thing. Nobody knew what it was.
Yeah, because it was Sick of It All played. I think Shelter played.
Shelter didn't play up here. Civ definitely played.
Yes, I definitely saw Civ too. That was the first time I saw Civ.
Civ played, and I think Face to Face.
Yeah. That sounds right.
Yeah, I forget who else.
And then it was like the slew of
Sublime might have even played, but I didn't care about that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think it was also the slew of the pop punk bands that were hot, like Pennywise and NoFX and shit like that. Like those bands.
I love Pennywise, but I get why people don't.
Yeah, I was never big into any of that pop punk stuff. It just didn't do it for me. I came from metal, so none of it was angry enough for me.
See, I'm weird, man. I came from grunge. Like that was like the first music I kind of gravitated towards on my own.
Yeah. Well, I will say I was really into a lot of grunge stuff.
Yeah, and I got into metal through that, and I also got into more punk type stuff through that also. And then obviously through punk I got into hardcore in the mid 90s, but the first couple of Warped Tours, man, were instrumental in that. Like they definitely, that was the first time I saw Sick of It All. It was the first time I saw Civ. It was the first time I saw Shelter. Like all those bands, like because of Warped Tour, I saw them. And then whenever they would come through on their own tours, then I'd start to go see them there.
It was definitely a gateway drug for a lot of people.
Did some good, at least early on.
Yeah, because I remember going to Warped Tour years later, and I remember seeing VOD on the Warped Tour and Agnostic Front.
First time I saw Hatebreed was on, really saw Hatebreed was on Warped Tour 97 or 6.
Yeah, I was just going to say Hatebreed. And I could tell there were a lot of kids that didn't know who some of these bands were, like VOD or Hatebreed or Snapcase or...
I knew who Hatebreed was already, technically. Like, I'd already heard them and listened to them, but that was the first time I'd actually caught them, was on at Asbury Park's Warped Tour. and I was blown away. I was like, holy shit, everything about this is awesome.
I did unfortunately see Kid Rock on Warped Tour.
I
did
also
too.
saw Kid Rock on a Warped Tour, and it's embarrassing.
It's like, who's the little guy?
But I will say that the drummer they had at the time, because I watched like, I don't know, 40% of their set just to see what the fuck it was. That girl who plays drum or played drums for them, I don't know if she does.
She's a monster,
a beast of a drummer.
Yeah, I remember seeing some video with her playing with him, and I'm just like, well, the song sucks, but she fucking rules, man.
Yeah, I didn't even pay close enough attention to catch that.
I feel like Limp Bizkit played too, one of them.
They
definitely did a Warped Tour. I didn't see them, and trying to think of who else I've seen on the Warped Tour over the years. I definitely saw Seven Dust on the Warped Tour once. I
saw them at Ozfest. I think it was the only time I ever saw them.
I don't remember. I definitely went a few years.
I like certain Seven Dust songs, but overall, I'm not that big.
That first record's got some hits on it, man.
That's where I like them.
I'm a big fan of their entire catalog. They just put out a new record that I really enjoy. Also,
I've actually heard that. I've heard that it's good. I just haven't given it a shot.
I mean, they kind of do their thing. So if you like them, you'll like it. If you're not into them, then it's not going to do anything for you.
I don't care about like bands that carry a stigma where it's like, oh, they're new metal. I don't want to listen to that shit. Like, I don't care if a band's new metal. If I like it, I like it. I'll listen to it. But, you know, it's a band I haven't followed beyond the first couple records, really, which I guess that would have been the late 90s. But, I've heard their newest record's actually pretty good. I just haven't had a chance to listen to it.
It is good. I definitely enjoy it. But, like I said, they do their thing. If you don't like it, you know, if you don't like the other records, you're probably not going to like this one.
Right.
But that's just how it is.
Right.
But when it comes to the grunge thing, it's interesting because I don't know, like, you're a little younger, so maybe you jumped onto it a little later because I know you were talking about Nirvana. To me, the grunge thing is crazy because I kind of watched it happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I was hip to, like Soundgarden was probably the first one that came out, and I had Louder Than Love, but I was really into Mother Love Bone.
They're a great band.
And it's crazy to look at it in the history of it, looking back, because Andrew Wood from Mother Love Bone died, and that was the catalyst for most of that whole grunge movement.
Oh, there was none of those bands would exist if it weren't for them.
Nirvana, and Nirvana was kind of on their own track, and Soundgarden was already signed.
Right.
And Mother Love Bone had put out the EP. They put out the Shine EP, and they were going to put out Apple, but then Andrew Wood died right before Apple came out. But without Andrew Wood dying, you would have never had Pearl Jam.
Yep.
Like those members.
Well, you would have never had Temple of the Dog, which turned into Pearl Jam, basically, and then opened up that whole scene. Like I said, Nirvana was on their own track.
Yeah, they were their own thing.
They were doing their own thing, but the whole Pearl Jam thing and everything that came from there would never have happened if Andrew Wood hadn't died.
Right.
Yep. And that's Alice in Chains' song "Wood" is about Andrew Wood.
Yeah. Matt, did you happen to see that Alice in Chains special that just showed up on YouTube?
Oh.
It was aired on YouTube last week for the Museum of Pop Culture.
I didn't, but I do want to. I'm glad you reminded me. I do want to watch that because I even love the newer post Lane records.
Yes,
like
there's a bunch of good songs.
Fantastic, man.
There's a bunch of good songs on there.
I'm just a huge Cantrell fan. Like, I love Jerry Cantrell as a guitar player and as a human being.
Yeah.
So I definitely need to watch that. I'm aware of it, but I haven't seen it yet.
It's definitely cool. I watched it when it aired because it originally was a live broadcast on YouTube, and now the full broadcast is on there, but they've also taken a lot of the individual performances and put them up also.
Okay.
Yeah, that Fishbone performance is
I did see
something
that.
next level.
Fishbone doing them bones was crazy.
Yeah, I did watch that. That was nuts.
And what I didn't realize that they mentioned on there is that Chris Cornell's wife was and still is Alice in Chains' manager.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, which is crazy. And she introduces her daughter. Her daughter does the song "Black Gives Way to Blue" because she had done she's 20 years old now. She had done a few things performing with her father.
Okay.
In the past.
Uh-huh.
But on this one, she performs. It's her on piano and vocals. And oddly enough, she's backed up on guitar. Dude that hasn't been seen in years, which is crazy. Chris DeGarmo, who used to be in Queensryche. Is playing guitar. And I'm like...
And they do Black Gives Way to Blue. That's a great song.
Yeah. It's wild because I had seen, and I saw a video of Eddie Trunk talking about it. They advertised that Chris DeGarmo was going to be on there. And I'm a huge Queensryche fan also.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody's seen Chris DeGarmo in years.
Okay.
Because he actually, after he left Queensryche, he toured with Cantrell.
Yeah.
Cantrell put out what was the name of the first solo record he did?
I forget the name of it, but yeah.
Boggy or Soggy something?
Yeah. I could look it up. But yeah, it's something like that, yeah.
I'm looking it up now. He toured, and I forget who played drums, but DeGarmo played guitar, and if I remember correctly, Robert Trujillo played bass.
That sounds right. That does sound right to me.
Boggy Depot, 1998.
Yes.
And then he disappeared after that?
And then, he works as a pilot.
Okay.
Like, he had gone to flying school while he was still in Queensryche and everything, and then he started working as a pilot, and he just went full on with that. And the dude is like a unicorn. Nobody's seen him in a long, long time.
And then all of a sudden, playing
because if you know all the crazy shit that went on with Queensryche and the split with Jeff Tate, like all the lawsuit shit.
And now there's two Queensryches?
Yeah. Well, there were, and then Tate finally lost the lawsuit, so now there's only one Queensryche.
Okay.
And it has the better singer.
Right.
Because Jeff Tate's voice is not held up well at all.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
But everybody thought it was kind of crazy that DeGarmo was quiet about it. Like, he never spoke up during that whole lawsuit because it was just like they were both on opposite sides fighting with each other about everything.
He's just like, fuck this, I'm flying planes.
Yeah, he's like, I'm flying planes. Fuck all that fucking drama shit. But that now here he is appearing out of nowhere. They put him on the advertisement that they had for it, like the big graphic, and people were like, holy shit, Chris DeGarmo.
That's cool.
And there he was just in the background playing guitar. And it was funny because the girl's mother, I'm forgetting her name, but, Cornell's wife, she's like talking about how her daughter grew up around her crazy uncles and Alice in Chains. And she's like, here performing this song backed up by one of her less crazy uncles, Chris DeGarmo from Queensryche. That's fucking funny.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's crazy.
But yeah, there were a bunch of really good musical performances on there. So it's definitely worth checking out. Plus, those dudes are just funny because they have them looking at different stuff in the museum and cracking jokes about all kinds of shit. Mm-hmm. And they're all just jokers.
Right.
Which you kind of knew if you ever saw the old Headbangers Ball where they were at
Action
Park.
Yeah, I watched that while it was when it aired.
Yeah.
With Ricky
I did too. But now William Duvall is just another joker like the rest of them. So it's really funny to watch.
He's great too. But
you have that, and they also show a lot of old footage and photos and all kinds of stuff of Lane and of Mike Starr. It's just a really cool thing to sit there and watch.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to watch that. I just, like I said, it was on my radar, and then I just completely forgot about it.
Both Korn and Metallica do completely different versions of Wood.
Really?
Yeah, which is kind of wild. Like, Korn actually plays it pretty straight.
And the Metallica version made me want to kill myself.
Yeah, they do an acoustic version of it that's not very good.
Dear Metallica, please quit. Thank you. Signed me.
Dear Lars, don't quit.
Knock it off.
Stop it. Oh, man. So, all right, Matt.
Yeah.
To wrap this up for the day, number one, you got to come back on. We're going to have a long-ranging conversation about grunge. That's got to be the next subject.
Sure.
Number two, we got to hit you with a top five or a hot take. What do you want? Do you want a top five or do you want a hot take?
Do top five.
Okay. Top five records that you think everyone should listen to at some point in their life. And I just need you to come off the cuff. It's okay if you change your mind later. You can change it for the next time.
That like everyone, including like my grandmother
just in general everyone. Like if you're like talking to somebody and you're trying to convince them to listen to a record, top five records that you're trying to convince people to listen to.
I'm gonna say.
Don't worry, I'm gonna cut out all the empty air.
Man,
just cut in Jeopardy music.
That's tough, man, because it's like.
Don't think. What? Just talk.
Alice in Chains' Dirt.
Nice.
Queen and Night at the Opera.
Ooh,
interesting.
Helmet Betty. Notorious B.I.G. Ready to Die.
Ooh.
And Springsteen, Born to Run.
Okay. I own every single record except for the Springsteen record because I don't fuck with Springsteen, but I understand why people like it. It's just not for me.
That record in particular is, I think, more important than people. I mean, it's a hugely popular record, but I think it's even more important than some people give it credit for. But for a number of reasons. But
I've listened to it. So 5-6 years ago, when I started the job I'm at, I had a lot of time on my hands, so I was just listening to records that everybody like creamed their shorts over. So I would just sit down to do whatever task I had, and I would just play music in the background. And I picked Born to Run, and I found myself enjoying parts of it and found myself hating parts of it. I get why people liked it. It's not really for me, but I can't argue that somebody should at least give it a listen.
Man, if I'm looking it up now because I'm terrible with song titles. I'm
with you, Len. I'm not a Springsteen guy.
Yeah,
I know a lot of people that aren't.
Songs I do like for a guy with that huge of a catalog and that long of a span of being, of playing. For me to only like 3 or 4 total songs through the whole thing, that just means that he doesn't speak to me as an artist. But I don't hate on Springsteen. I just don't.
I see him as a storyteller, I guess, and that might sound kind of corny, but
Biggie's a better storyteller, bro.
He is, and that's honest, dude. Honestly, that's why I said it. I tried to pick records that. Helmet's more of a sonic thing, like because Page's lyrics are like a fucking enigma. But like I tried to pick records that like would tell you a story about different people's situations. You know what I mean? Like what Biggie's going to tell you is different than what Lane's going to tell you, and what Springsteen's going to tell you, and what Freddie Mercury's going to tell you about. Like it's just, I like music that tells me a story. I've always
Queen A Night at the Opera is a fucking fantastic record, though.
Yeah,
definitely.
It's a masterpiece. But with Springsteen, like I grew up, I was raised by my grandparents, but like, I spent some time with my mom. That's not fair to say. I was like 50-50. I spent a lot of time with my grandparents and then time with my mom, but my mom was super into Springsteen and like Mellencamp and shit like that. And my happy times when I was real young with my mom, I associate with Springsteen.
Okay.
It's kind of like one of those things, but specifically the record Born to Run, I just really, really think is a great record, and it tells some great stories. Like, I just looked at, if you listen to 10th Avenue Freeze Out and can't get with that groove in that song, man. Oh, it's so good.
See, for me, the only song on Born to Run that really stuck out to me is actually the title track, Born to Run.
That's a great record, it's a great song to me.
It's the like kind of bell noise in the chorus.
Right.
Just something about it. Just I like that piece of it.
Yeah.
I don't really care about the rest of the song that much, but the chorus, it stuck out and I liked it. Sure. I don't even remember the song you're talking about. Maybe if I go back and listen to it, I might have a moment where I'm like, oh yeah, I did enjoy that.
Yeah, it's track 2. It's the second song on the record. But I'm not saying stop what you're doing and go listen to it. But
stop what you're doing. I'm about to ruin. Digital Underground? No.
All right, you know what?
Not. No.
All right, let's bump Springsteen out.
Dance.
Put Digital Underground on there.
Humpty Dance.
Tupac doing the Running Man. All of it.
Oh God.
So Len.
Yeah.
Pop off 5 records real quick.
5 records that I think absolutely everyone should listen to at some point in their lives.
I could do this every episode and never repeat a single.
Okay. I'm going to do 5 different genres. Number 1 record is Lagwagon Double Platinum. Number 2, Candiria Process of Self-Development. Number 3 is Michael Jackson Thriller. I don't care if people have canceled him or not. Whatever record Thriller is on, I think it's just Thriller.
It is. Yeah, it's Thriller.
Listen to that whole record. There almost isn't a bad song in the batch. Cancel me, don't cancel me. The record's fucking good. Let's see here. Sun Ra. Pick any record from Sun Ra and just give it a listen. It will take you into places that you've never been before via jazz. And then the last record that I think everybody should listen to is Snoop Dogg Doggy Style. One of the greatest hip hop records ever released.
I agree. All right, can I make one change? I just had a record pop into my head.
Go for it.
I'm gonna bump out Springsteen.
You just spent 10 minutes on the hill.
No.
You just justified this choice.
That's all right. That's fine.
How about just an addendum? This is 5.5 or 6.
That's fine.
Just an extra.
Stevie Wonder Talking Book.
Great record.
Okay. Sorry.
So Gary, what are your 5?
I'll throw you 5 in all completely different directions. You ready?
Sure.
I was just putting this list together now. And like I said, we could do this every episode and I'll never repeat because there's so many that I could throw out there that I love. Led Zeppelin, Houses of the Holy.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Leeway, Desperate Measures.
Ooh.
Which I love that record.
Me too.
Ice Cube, Death Certificate.
Oof, that's a fucking banger.
With the greatest diss track of all time. No Vaseline. You will never touch that song. Nobody can touch that song. That is the greatest diss track of all time.
So hard.
Iron Maiden, Power Slave.
Okay.
And to go in a totally different direction, Steve Vai, Passion and Warfare.
I'm going to skip that one because I know I'm going to be bored.
Yeah, if I remember right, you're not big on the instrumental stuff.
I like some instrumental stuff, but I just Vai, Satriani, I'm like a 2-song guy. Give me 2 songs, I'm good. I can't make it through a whole record. So maybe I'd have to listen to the record in 2-song chunks.
Maybe.
I just find that it all just starts to blend together and sounds the same.
Not for everybody, but I think that's a great record.
Everybody should go out and listen to those 15, 16 records.
16.
Go do it right now.
Yeah, what else you got to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's quarantine, so
yeah. Put
your ass on the fucking couch and listen to something.
They've obviously got nothing better to do if they're sitting there listening to us for 3 hours.
Yeah.
So this would normally be the time where we ask Matt, what's next for Iron Price, but nobody's doing anything.
Well, they have a split coming up, so why don't you tell us quickly about the split?
That's true.
Plug your stuff.
Social
where
media.
Where people can find you.
Yeah. So we're in the midst of writing 2 new songs. One of them's a little more finished than the other, but for a split, I haven't publicly said who with, not for any particular reason. It's a band out of Richmond, Virginia called Terror Cell, who we played with on the very last show we played before quarantine. And they just like blew me away. If you're into like that Hydra Head, like Converge, Coalesce, ISIS, like that kind of stuff, like they're kind of doing something similar to that. So we're gonna be doing a little split with those guys coming up hopefully early next year. They're already finished recording, so we're kind of the hold up here. But yeah, that's what we got coming up. It's not much, but it's all we got. And
who's putting that out?
It's going to be just digital for now.
Okay.
Last conversation I had with Mario at Upstate, he said he would release it digitally because he has a deal with Nuclear Blast for digital distribution. So
cool.
So yeah, I mean, why not? You know, Nuclear Blast wants to put it out digitally. That's fine. So if it gets a physical release, obviously Mario will get first crack at it if he wants it. But you know, we just wanted to just get some new music out and kind of goof off a little bit. But yeah, you just anything Iron Price. It's pretty much everything Iron Price HC, like Facebook, Instagram. We have a Twitter, even though I'd never use it, so don't bother.
Don't blame you.
But yeah, I mean, we're all over the place.
Twitter is a wretched hive of scum and villainy.
It is, and I don't tread there. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
Cool.
Awesome.
Any last words, Mr. Carmichael?
Matt, thanks for coming on. I know it's late and you got to get up early. Appreciate you sticking it out with us.
No, man.
And
Thanks,
I appreciate you as a friend, buddy.
Hey, I appreciate you too, man. I appreciate both of you guys for having me.
Happy we had you on. It's an awesome conversation, and we can get deep into other stuff next time around for sure.
Yeah, hopefully people made it through that.
If they're not asleep right now.
What you don't understand, Matt, is we don't actually care. We just do what we do.
Hey,
if you're listening, you're listening. And if you're not listening, you're not listening.
If you're into it, you're into it. Obviously, some people seem to be into it and don't mind our long-winded conversations about random shit. But that's fine. We enjoy it. So if they enjoy it, then it's cool.
Yeah, if you've made it this far, thank you.
Yeah. And if you're asleep, wake up. TheUpgradePodcast.net for all of our links. And by the way, I forgot to mention on social media, we're now available on Pandora. So I have to whip up a graphic and make that known. We're moving up in the world.
To the east side.
And by the way, since I haven't mentioned it yet, Rudy Giuliani has COVID.
Yeah, fuck him.
Exactly. So I just had to throw that in there since I haven't had a chance to rejoice in that yet on this podcast. Good for you, you fuck you leaky bastard. Thanks for listening. We will see you guys again next week. Peace.
Peace.